There were 18 bronze pillars on the left and right of the square, which were covered with solemn bronze patterns. It was vaguely similar to the cloud palace of the past. Jian Wushuang looked around again before he finally entered meditation. After breaking away from the past clay idol from the divine power universe, he had jumped from ancestor level to Yen Immortal. With his strength in the Yen Immortal stage, he had not encountered a life-and-death situation for the time being in the great Yen domain. Even the giant sea-sky octopus and the patriarch of the whirling heaven did not give him a real fear of death. Jian Wushuang vaguely guessed that only by leaving the Yen Immortal realm could he really take that step. Not long after he sat in meditation, he seemed to realize something and reached out to take out the wordless heavenly book from his arms. Jian Wushuang turned to the first 15 pages, which were full of tiny words. His eyes stopped on the 16th page, but there was nothing else on it except for the blank space. That shouldn't be the case. Wasn't I just having a sword duel with Cheng Qing? Why is there no indication of this in the book? With some suspicion, Jian Wushuang tried to transfer a wisp of the battle memory in his divine sense. The wisp of consciousness quickly sank into the page. Jian Wushuang was not disappointed. The wisp of spiritual awareness started to write directly. Neat. Tiny words appeared on the blank page one by one. And this time, the writing speed was extremely fast. In almost 10 breaths, he had finished writing everything. The number of pages had also changed from the original several to a thin page. It can't be, right? Cheng Qing's sword Dao actually took so little space of writing. Jian Wushuang could not believe it. He quickly flipped through it, and after confirming that there was only one page, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. But immediately after, an even more mysterious scene appeared. That originally only one page of Cheng Qing's sword technique actually disappeared line by line. It was as if there was a pair of big hands in the dark, wiping away everything. No way. What is this? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Could it be that the collection of swords looked down on Cheng Qing's sword principle and erased it? Without an answer, Jian Wushuang could only watch as Cheng Qing's sword principle disappeared completely. What an extremely strange collection of swords. He looked at the one and only copy in his hand, and at the same time, he thought that if he met someone like Ding Bai again in the future, wouldn't he be able to copy it and steal his mastery? Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. The collection of swords was a heaven-defying treasure. The senior who had created it must have been an interesting guy. After keeping the collection of swords, Jian Wushuang took a seat. To him, 5 years was not even as long as the time he had spent fishing in the heavenly cloud palace. He strived to adjust his yen power and realm to their peak state in these 5 years so that he could deal with everything that would happen next. The Boyong bottle was also opened, and the 3 emperors only wandered around Little Lonely Heaven once before returning to the bottle to sleep. Everything went smoothly. Jian Wushuang did not know what was waiting for him, so he was forced to accept it. Often, under the seemingly calm water, there would be undercurrents. 5 years had passed in a flash. When the brilliant flowing light transformed by yen power surged out from the tip of Jian Wushuang's hair again, the boundary of Little Lonely Heaven was opened. The young emperor took off his luxurious clothes and changed into the court clothes that symbolized the prince. On this dark gold court dress, every stroke of the threaded needle depicted mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas, symbolizing nature's meaning. On his collar, 2 small, symmetrical beasts with thin ears were embedded with dark gold threads. This court dress made the young emperor lose some of his feminine charm and look more heroic and majestic, but the paleness of his face could not be hidden. Behind him there were nearly 1,000 figures. Young emperor, I'll go and invite brother Jian over. Cheng Qing cupped his hands and said. Then, just as he was about to move, he was suddenly called out. You guys wait here. I'll go there. After leaving these words, the young emperor went to the depths of Little Lonely Heaven alone. Cheng Qing's eyes were filled with envy. Brother Jian is truly amazing. I, Cheng Qing, have followed the young emperor for so many years, but I have never seen anyone receive such treatment. The thin purple-robed man looked up at the young emperor's figure and lowered his eyes again. As if he had sensed something, Jian Wushuang, who was sitting in meditation, slowly opened his eyes and saw a figure floating over. "Brother Jian, Prince Yen is here to see you." The young emperor smiled and landed on the square. After exhaling a mouthful of turbid breath, Jian Wushuang stood up and nodded. The young emperor sized up Jian Wushuang and asked with interest, "How's your recovery?" "Not bad. When do we leave?" "It's all ready. We're just waiting for you." Jian Wushuang nodded. At this moment, Chun Qiu also walked out of the hall and stood behind him. Just as he was about to leave, the young emperor suddenly stopped him and gave him a set of clothes. "Change into it. The embroiderers in the Great Sea region made it for you. It's not bad." Jian Wushuang felt helpless, but he could not lose his temper. He had to quickly rush into the hall and change his clothes. After a while, Jian Wushuang appeared in a long robe with silver silk embroidery. Although the clothes made him look extraordinarily handsome, it also made him feel a little uncomfortable when he wielded his sword. It was far less comfortable than the black-robed ranger's clothes. The young emperor's eyes were filled with satisfaction, and he turned around to lead the way. "Brother Jian, I didn't expect you to look so similar to the emperor." Chun Qiu sized up Jian Wushuang and there was a flash of envy in his eyes. "Don't talk nonsense. This outfit doesn't suit me." Jian Wushuang laughed bitterly, loosened his belt, and stepped forward. Chun Qiu scratched his head. "It does look a little similar to my imperial father's figure in the past. It's really strange." He would never have thought that this quiet young man who seemed to have endless stories was once a cosmos god. A total of more than 1,000 ancestor-level top cultivators and 20 yen immortals stood in the void. At that moment, they revealed their true fangs that they had been hiding all along. Outside the Six Heavens realm, in the void of the Great Sea region, the young emperor looked at the figure in front of him with a rare calm gaze. At that moment, the void of the Great Sea region was filled with the sound of footsteps. Strange beasts that Jian Wushuang had never seen before rode the wind and came over on flowing clouds. This strange beast was like a dragon or a sheep, with curved horns and thin ears. Its body was covered in golden scales and was engraved with cloud stripes. It was not strange, but at the same time it was quite mysterious. A total of 20 strange beasts and 10 imperial carriages arrived. Each carriage had a flag with the word Yen engraved on it. After a long time, the young emperor's calm and majestic voice resounded through the entire Great Sea region. "Everyone, follow Prince Yen to the heavenly court for the banquet." None of them spoke, and they all stood there with their hands cupped. Each of them had been by the young emperor's side for countless years, so they did not need to say a word to know what he meant. A murderous intent rose to the sky. The thin purple-robed man stepped out of the formation, held the young emperor's hand, and sent him into one of the 10 imperial carriages. The other 9 carriages were used to confuse the enemy. After sending the young emperor into the imperial carriage, the skinny purple-robed man returned and said to Jian Wushuang, "Follow me." Jian Wushuang did not suspect anything. After exchanging a glance with Chun Qiu, Chun Qing, and the others, he went straight ahead. When he was pushed into the carriage, Jian Wushuang saw that the young emperor was among them. He was embarrassed and wanted to leave. "Brother Jian, please stay. I was the one who asked my companion to let you in here." The young emperor waved his hand. "I can't tell if there will be any danger on this journey, so I'm asking you to come along." Jian Wushuang nodded and then sat in the luxurious carriage. Chun Qiu, Chun Qing, and the rest of the Yen immortals all entered the other 9 imperial carriages. The remaining 1,000 or so ancestor-level experts didn't follow them in. Instead, they only followed 100 or so of them to serve as guards of honor. The rest of them were scattered across the entire Great Sea region. As the preparations were completed, a total of 10 imperial carriages took off with the wind. The dragon sheep-like beast stepped on the clouds, and each step it took covered a distance of hundreds of millions of miles. Even though the speed was so terrifying, sitting in the imperial carriage, he could not help but feel the slightest bit of turbulence. At that moment, only Jian Wushuang and the young emperor were sitting in the carriage that could accommodate dozens of people. The atmosphere was a little awkward, so Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. With the rising clouds and smoke from the golden furnace, the entire imperial carriage had become an excellent place for cultivation. Brother Jian, this trip will take several months. If you have nothing else to do, you should take a good rest, the young emperor reminded. Jian Wushuang nodded. I will. At this point, the long journey had entered a silent stage. The imperial carriage traveled through the void, passing through many void worlds as it headed toward the most mysterious place. The young emperor's 6 heavens realm was just the 6 common heavenly realms in the Great Sea region. Beyond the Great Sea region was an even more vast universe. He did not know when he would arrive at the heavenly court that was ruled by Zhen Wuyang. Jian Wushuang was really curious about this legendary figure who had basically lived under the curses of the 3 emperors' true shadows. To be able to destroy the bodies of 3 emperors and the heavenly court on his own, how terrifying must Zhen Wuyang be? Emperor Fenghua, Chun Qiu's imperial father, had also died at the hands of Zhen Wuyang. Jian Wushuang knew 4 of them, which showed their terrifying strength. Perhaps a god emperor of such a level would know something. While Jian Wushuang was thinking about his next step, almost 20 days had passed. He did not know if he was in a dream or when he was awake, but he felt a sense of danger. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes. The young emperor opened his eyes at the same time, and there was a chill in his eyes. Are these bastards crazy? Do they actually dare to intercept and kill us here? Do you really think I'm made of mud? The young emperor said coldly and was about to step out. Jian Wushuang reached out to stop him and said in a low voice, Don't go out yet. We'll wait and see. He nodded slowly, and yen power appeared in his hand. In the next moment, an extremely powerful yen power broke through the void and exploded in the 10 imperial carriages. Jian Wushuang felt the space around him stagnate, and then the imperial chariot in front of him shattered. The 3 yen immortals sitting in the carriage were heavily injured. He could no longer wait and see. Jian Wushuang rushed out of the carriage and stood in the void. Chun Qiu, Cheng Qing, and the others also quickly gathered. Brother Jian, how's the young emperor? Cheng Qing said in a deep voice as he held his true sword. I'm fine. A gloomy voice sounded, and the young emperor stepped out slowly. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. He felt that there were no less than 40 strong auras rushing toward him from all directions. In the starry void, there were indeed close to 40 yen immortals. 20 against 40, they were at a huge disadvantage. However, Chun Qing and the other yen immortals still surrounded the young emperor. Then, a gloomy-looking yen immortal stepped forward and pointed at the young emperor. Leave him here and I'll let you live. Otherwise, you'll die. Who sent you? Is it Prince Zhou or Prince Yu? The young emperor asked in a deep voice. Yen Immortal laughed sinisterly again. What's the use of a dead man knowing more? However, you still have a way out. As long as you turn back, I promise not to hurt a single one of you. The young emperor sneered. Are you so sure that you've got me? Of course, if I want to. None of you will be able to leave here alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire void seemed to have turned into a quagmire. The vast yen power directly crushed toward the young emperor and the others. Jian Wushuang snorted and the invisible sword in his hand cut through the encirclement. Everything returned to normal. When Yen Immortal, who was still laughing, saw this, his eyes dimmed and he said, I thought you were just a bunch of motley crew, but you do have some ability. When Chun Qing heard this, he immediately took a step forward and released a vast yen power. His realm was rising, and even Jian Wushuang felt that Chun Qing's realm was far more than just Yen Immortal. All of the Yen Immortals that surrounded him had a change in expression. Attack! Rumble! Rumble! A total of over 40 Yen Immortals released a terrifying yen power. The void was collapsing rapidly, and the violent yen power shot over like a waterfall. Cheng Qing waved his hand and a yen power barrier immediately surrounded everyone, blocking the terrifying power. Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated. He summoned the invisible sword and moved forward. This barrier would not last for long. Even though Chun Qing's cultivation level showed signs of a breakthrough, he was still a yen immortal. He could not protect himself from the siege of so many yen immortals. Therefore, Jian Wushuang took the lead and killed the most number of Yen Immortals as soon as possible. 40 Yen Immortals, which was several times more than the time in Jingchuan Tian City. The young emperor's eyes were bloodshot. The repeated attacks were far beyond his imagination. He did not show any mercy at all. Prince Zhou, if I'm still alive, I'll kill you first. The void trembled. With Jian Wushuang as the leader, a total of 60 Yen Immortals began to fight. After forcing Yen Immortal to retreat 1,000 feet, Jian Wushuang threw out the Transcendence Heavenly Gate to severely injure all the enemies who dared to come forward. One of the Yen Immortals did not manage to retreat in time and was crushed into dust by the power of the Transcendence Heavenly Gate. His immortal source was shattered. The intense battlefield immediately became empty. The 10 Yen Immortals all looked at Jian Wushuang vigilantly. The power of that mystical divine ability was so vast. On the other side, Chun Qing was on a killing spree. Every attack was enough to severely injure several Yen Immortals who dared to rush forward. However, even so, the Yen Immortals under the young emperor were still very tired. 20 against 40. How could they be a match? Without the help of the three emperors, Jian Wushuang could at most face several Yen Immortals without being defeated. However, there were more than 10 Yen Immortals surrounding him. He alone had attracted a quarter of the firepower, and he was extremely depressed. Obediently hand over the head, and I can let you suffer less pain. A powerful rippling force waterfall smashed towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang turned the sword in his hand and tore the attack apart. He smiled disdainfully and said, "Do you think you can take my head?" The Yen Immortal leader's expression turned serious. He waved his hands and a total of 11 Yen Immortals exerted their strength together. A ray of light that covered the sky pressed down with the force of the entire void. Jian Wushuang's eyes were solemn. He first used a force to block it and then stabbed forward with his sword. The extinctive sword. One sword strike with the power of 100,000 sword strikes, breaking the surface with a single point. Boom! Tens of thousands of flowing lights shot up. Jian Wushuang held the long sword in his hand and advanced forward. The light that covered the sky was split into two and quickly dissipated. Jian Wushuang was not in a good state either. The combined attack of the 11 Yen Immortals was not something he could withstand. The surface of his skin seemed to be burning. "Brother Jian, let me help you." With a low growl, Chun Qiu controlled the 8-armed Arhat and charged forward. The 8 giant arms followed Jian Wushuang and blasted into the sky-covering light. Jian Wushuang felt his body relax and the light in front of him disappeared. Chun Qiu came to him and said quickly, "Brother Jian, let's retreat. There are 40 Yen Immortals here. If we continue like this, we will definitely die. I can't leave." Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. He had his own set of rules. If he left without a care, it would be a disaster for Chun Qing, the young emperor, and the others. If they retreated without a fight, the first blow would be their morale. No matter what, he could not retreat today. Jian Wushuang stretched out his hand to block the huge power that was coming at him again. Then he turned around and pushed Chun Qiu into the protective circle. He was only at the ancestor level, even with the 8-armed Arhat. He could be killed by Yen Immortal's attack if he was not careful. The only thing Jian Wushuang could do now was to try his best to protect him. Yen Immortals were dying constantly. Such an existence could destroy the world with a wave of his hand, not to mention that there were nearly 60 Yen Immortals fighting. The void was torn apart, and the nearby planes were also affected and collapsed. Almost 100 ancestor-level cultivators had been killed in the beginning, and the number of Yen Immortals brought by the young emperor was also decreasing rapidly. The few of them were already arrows at the end of their flight. Even though Chun Qing's Yen power was at the peak, he was still weak in the face of so many Yen Immortals. A wave of Star River Lake Sea Sword intent burst out, barely blocking the group of Yen Immortals that pounced at him again. Jian Wushuang and the others were already surrounded. At this point, there were only 8 Yen Immortals left beside the young emperor. Chun Qing's right arm, which was holding the sword, was full of wounds, especially his right rib, where the scars were shocking. These injuries caused by the same level of Yen Immortal would be very difficult to heal in a short period of time. which also meant that their combat strength would drop to a certain extent. Looking at the remaining 25 or 26 Yen Immortals, Jian Wushuang and the others felt their hearts sink. Young Emperor, I'll stay behind to cover your retreat. You guys go back to the Six Heavens realm and don't go to the Heaven Court again. Chang Qing said in a low voice, only by living can I continue to fulfill my long-cherished wish. Brother Jian, I'll leave the young emperor's safety to you. He looked at Jian Wushuang and said. Before Jian Wushuang could speak, the young emperor said coldly, Chun Qing, when did I need you to make decisions for me? Chun Qing was anxious. But young emperor, if you don't leave now, you won't be able to leave. As the next emperor, I have to go to the heavenly court. Even if I die on the way, it cannot be changed. The young emperor's voice was indifferent, and his eyes were filled with the will to die. Heh, a successor emperor, a piece of trash who can only cultivate and can't achieve Tao, dares to call himself a successor emperor? A feminine-looking Yen Immortal sneered in disdain. Behind him, the 20 over Yen Immortals also started to laugh. Young master, leave it to me. The skinny purple-robed man lowered his head slightly. When he took a step forward, he was pulled back by the young emperor. Let the trash he spoke of send him on his way. His voice was indifferent, but it carried a heavy sense of authority. In the next moment, the battle resumed. A domain filled with darkness spread out, and the young emperor seemed to have become a true emperor who controlled an area. Whoever kills Prince Yen will be heavily rewarded. The feminine Yen Immortal was not afraid. Instead, he smiled and charged at the young emperor like a ghost. His sword pierced through one of the Yen Immortal's shoulder blades. Jian Wushuang shouted, and the Yen power smashed forward. The extreme darkness, heavenly gates, terrifying power once again sealed it. However, the Yen Immortals, who had already experienced how terrifying it was, joined forces to block it. Under Jian Wushuang's full power attack, none of them were injured. Jian Wushuang's heart sank, but he still raised the invisible sword and rushed forward. All kinds of supreme Yen power and divine techniques bombarded his body, and even his indestructible divine body began to be injured. The young emperor released his domain and destroyed a Yen Immortal with a single strike, but he was immediately blocked by the other Yen Immortals. Chang Qing and the others were barely able to protect themselves. Ghastly wounds began to appear on everyone's bodies. Just as Jian Wushuang and the others were about to be completely surrounded and killed in this fierce battle, there was a sudden monstrous force in the boundless void. Jian Wushuang pulled the young emperor in front of him almost subconsciously and retreated. Clang! A terrifying slash that could easily shatter the void seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. The void within hundreds of millions of miles was torn apart by this strike. Almost at the same time, a destructive slash came from nowhere. More than 10 Yen Immortals did not manage to dodge in time. Their bodies turned into dust and their immortal sources disappeared. This terrifying and graceful sword strike directly plowed out a ravine that was billions of miles long in the void. Deathly silence, extreme deathly silence. All the surviving Yen Immortals were stunned at this moment. The sword strike was hundreds of millions of miles long, and its brilliant power poured out. It was impossible for anyone to cause damage to any part of the world in the Great Yen Domain unless they were Yen Immortals. Even Jian Wushuang had to borrow the power of the 3 Emperor Lords to destroy the river. The difficulty was obvious. What kind of existence was this sword that had the power to destroy millions of miles of space? A bunch of ignorant people. Do you know that you have to protect the environment? An extremely impatient voice resounded in the void. Jian Wushuang looked at the source of the voice and saw a figure emitting a hazy brilliance standing in the distance. Even from such a distance, he could feel a supreme pressure that was beyond his knowledge. However, the figure only appeared for a moment before it disappeared. This is just a warning. If you dare to cause any more destruction and treat all living things as nothing, you can all disappear. The majestic voice resounded through the void and only disappeared after a long time. Such a terrifying sword move and such a mysterious figure had only appeared for a brief moment before disappearing. Looking at the sword mark that tore apart the void, all the Yen Immortals' mouths twitched. It was too overbearing. The indiscriminate attack had killed nearly 20 Yen immortals. If Jian Wushuang had not delayed the young emperor at the critical moment, the two of them would have died. After recovering from the shock, Jian Wushuang looked at the remaining Yen immortals and sneered. The originally one-sided suppression situation was directly reversed by the mysterious man's sword strike. Including Jian Wushuang, there were 6 Yen immortals and 1 ancestor-level expert left on the young emperor's side. On the other hand, there were only 12 Yen immortals left from the enemies they had killed. Just he and Chun Qing alone could fight against 12 Yen immortals, not to mention the young emperor and the skinny purple-robed man. The feminine Yen immortal no longer had the heart to fight. After shouting out to retreat, he prepared to escape without a care. An extremely dark vine seemed to grow out of nothingness and attached itself to his body with a strong aura of death. The surrounding void seemed to stagnate, and even the Yen power in his body was stiff. The great terror of life and death made this feminine Yen immortal extremely terrified. "Quick, save me." However, the other Yen immortals who fled in a panic did not even look at him. They all scattered in the void and disappeared. What was waiting for him was an extremely terrifying experience. Yen immortal turned around with difficulty, unable to even speak clearly. "Open your mouth and stick out your tongue." The young emperor's face was gloomy and he held a true sword. When he heard this, he was overjoyed in his heart. Even if his tongue was cut off, it would grow back in at most 1,000 years. At least he could still keep his life. Immediately, this effeminate Yen immortal stuck out his tongue and mumbled, "And many thanks, young emperor." The blade of the sword slashed across, and a section of the tongue was directly cut off. He grunted and divine blood spurted out of his mouth. Before he could close his mouth, another sword pierced through his face. A terrifying Yen power came out of the blade and blew his entire head and immortal source into pieces. Jian Wushuang took half a step back and frowned. This young emperor's killing intent was too strong, which was evident. Without his head and immortal source, the Yen immortal fell into the void without a sound. In the entire void, only the remains of many Yen immortals were left floating silently. The young emperor slowly turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang with raised eyebrows. A stream of divine blood gushed out of his nose without warning then. He passed out. The skinny purple-robed man seemed to have expected this. He grabbed the young emperor and ran straight into the imperial carriage that had not broken yet. Chun Qing smiled bitterly and said, "His old issue is acting up again." Jian Wushuang did not ask any meaningless questions. He took Chun Qiu to the other imperial carriages. In this fierce battle, only 3 out of the 10 imperial chariots were left. On the other hand, there were almost no casualties for the thin-eared beasts that were like dragons and sheep. Chun Qing waved his hand and grabbed the reins on the imperial carriage before leaving and continuing forward. They were intercepted halfway and only 6 of them were left. It was a tragic situation. If the mysterious man did not interfere, they would probably be in a situation where they had a 90% chance of annihilation. At this moment, even Jian Wushuang was a little puzzled. How did he survive until now under layers of attacks? The carriage moved forward, and the only person sitting with Jian Wushuang was Chun Qiu. "Brother Jian, does Prince Yen have any hidden injuries? Did you see that?" "This is the second time," Chun Qiu said in a low voice. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and then said, "I can't rule out this possibility. According to the repeated attacks, it's a miracle that he survived." When Chun Qiu heard this, he facepalmed and said, "It's hard to believe that I, who wanted him dead the most, am actually standing on the same side as him." Jian Wushuang laughed and said, "When the time is right, we can leave. I guess that's the only way." Chun Qiu nodded helplessly and then said in a low voice, "However, it's easier now that we know he has an underlying injury. If we really have to fall out with him one day, we can also deal him a heavy blow." He shook his head and stopped talking. There was only the faint howling of the strong wind left in his ears. After another 20 days of travel, there were no more accidents. The emptiness in the surroundings is about to reach the end, and is gradually replaced by a heavenly realm filled with vast Yen power. The Yen power was so dense that it seemed to have substance. There was also the aura of living beings spread in the void. The seven-colored rainbow stretched across the heavens and set up above the heavenly realm. Walking through this place, it was as if one had entered a dream. It was relaxing and pleasant. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and pulled open the curtain in front of the window. After seeing this scene, even Jian Wushuang sighed. The nine-sided super heavenly realm was like a gateway, like the stars surrounding the moon, setting off the vast heavenly court in the center. There were thousands of waterfalls flowing down from the edge of the heavenly court like jade belts, which were indescribably magnificent and mysterious. Brother Jian, this should be the heavenly court of that Jin Wuyang. Chun Qiu's expression was solemn. Then, a restless movement came from the Boyang bottle, and the cork was slightly opened. Then, the voices of the three emperors rang out. Little friend, what's going on? Why do I feel like something's wrong here? Why does this aura feel so familiar? It makes me feel inexplicably irritated. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, Seniors, we should be entering the heavenly court of Jin Wuyang now. What? Little friend, are you going straight to the lair of Jin Wuyang? My true shadow has yet to recover. Jian Wushuang's face was full of black lines. Looking at the magnificent posture of the heavenly court in the heavenly realm, he was afraid that even if he really wanted to attack the lair of Jin Wuyang, he would not be able to. I'm not thinking of doing anything. You've misunderstood. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly and then told the whole story. In the end, there was silence in the Boyang bottle, which was then followed by a burst of excitement that could not be suppressed. That's great. Young friend, you can continue to maintain your relationship with that troublesome young emperor and gain his trust. When the three of us recover, we can come and destroy Jin Wuyang's old nest. It's so convenient and fast. That's not very good. Jian Wushuang's mouth twitched. Young friend, don't feel too much psychological pressure. Just act as usual and make your presence known. Leave the rest to us. This really saved us a lot of effort. This old man Jin Wuyang would never have thought that we are right beside him. Shush, keep quiet. We must not reveal our aura. We'll leave everything to our young friend. Little friend, you have to take care of yourself from now on. Don't call us out unless you have no choice. We'll recharge our energy. Jian Wushuang still wanted to speak, but the cork of the Boyang bottle was directly closed, not giving him any chance. He smiled bitterly. At this moment, Cheng Qing's voice came from outside the carriage. Brother Jian, we should get off the carriage. Jian Wushuang responded and then left the imperial chariot with Chun Qiu. Stepping on the vast clouds, Cheng Qing took the lead and ran over. He laughed and said, Brother Jian, how do you feel? Looking around, Jian Wushuang nodded and said, Not bad. As they conversed, figures that were either riding on cranes, flying swords, or riding carriages gathered in front of the heavenly gate. Looking around, without exception, they were all in the Yen Immortal stage. Countless seven-colored lotus peaks shone in the sky. In the center of the 9 boundless heavenly realms, there was a great road paved by the clouds. There were already close to 100 figures gathered outside the heavenly gate. Under the guidance of the thin purple robe, the young emperor, who was wearing a blood-stained court dress, slowly walked down the imperial carriage. The hundreds of Yen immortals who were also waiting looked at each other when they saw the young emperor in a sorry state. They then cupped their hands unwillingly and said, Greetings, young emperor. Without even looking at the perfunctory Yen immortals, the young emperor walked toward Jian Wushuang with light steps. Brother Jian, follow me. Jian Wushuang nodded. After looking around again, he stood behind the young emperor. There were only 6 Yen immortals left, with 1 ancestor level following by his side. He did not even have a guard of honor. Looking at the young emperor's slightly embarrassed figure, the hundreds of Yen immortals all had different thoughts. The guards of the heavenly gate were tens of Yen immortals in silver helmets. The 2 Yen immortals in the front split their axes and stepped forward, cupping their hands. Greetings, young emperor. The emperor has ordered that before the time is up, you are not to. Before he could finish, the young emperor suddenly raised his leg without any warning and kicked the 2 Yen immortals. Get lost, the young emperor said gloomily. then strode into the heavenly gate. No one dared to stop him. The two Yen immortals who were kicked away were covered in dust and dirt, standing in a daze. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and threw the axes at the two of them. Then, he followed the young emperor and stepped on the great road. The figures waiting outside the heavenly gate began to discuss in low voices. One of the elders with white hair and beard held a horsetail whisk and snorted coldly. "He's getting more and more arrogant. In my opinion, after this banquet, the position of the young emperor should belong to Prince Zhou. Wuxia, aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? If your words were to reach the young emperor's ears, you'll probably be stabbed twice before you can even leave the heavenly court." One of the middle-aged men with an extraordinary temperament seemed to be at odds with the white-haired elder and sneered in response. The expression of the elder named Wuxia changed slightly as if he had recalled something. He no longer spoke and closed his eyes in deep thought. At this moment, more and more imperial carriages gathered in front of the heavenly gate. On these imperial banners there were different words. In front of the 10 imperial chariots, the G flag fluttered in the wind. Then, a figure wearing a white court dress stepped out of the carriage. Seeing this, the group of Yen immortals who were standing on their own hurriedly stepped forward and cupped their hands. "Greetings, second young master." The handsome young man, who was dressed in a plain court robe, raised his eyebrows when he saw the carriage, which had the Yen flag on the back. He then looked at the Yen immortals who had come to greet him and smiled. "Immortals, please follow Prince Zhou to the heavenly court." "Yes," the group of Yen immortals agreed with smiles on their faces. As the prince strode into the heavenly realm, dozens of imperial carriages gathered in succession. And in front of these imperial carriages, there were their own words, "Yu Qian, Mo Hua Lin." The figures who were dressed in court attire and walked out of the carriage slowly had different expressions. After smiling at each other, they followed their respective companions and stepped into the heavenly gate. As he walked on the great road, Jian Wushuang felt that yen power in his body was changing at a perceivable speed. At the same time, a majestic voice resounded throughout the entire heavenly realm. "The heavenly court is open. Immortals, please take your seats." Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked at the front. At the very front of the great road was the magnificent heavenly court. Ever since the young emperor woke up, his face had been extremely gloomy, and his hostility was so dense that it seemed to have materialized. It was as if he was not going to a banquet, but to kill. On the way here, after being intercepted and killed, the clothes of Jian Wushuang and the others were more or less damaged and stained with blood. They looked very fierce. They did not know how much time had passed as they strolled forward. When the heavenly court with thousands of waterfalls appeared in front of them, a rainbow bridge connected the heaven from the heavenly realm to the heavenly court, which was magnificent and bold. More than 100 children came over on the rainbow bridge, their red lips and white teeth. No one would have thought that these children were all extremely powerful top cultivators. Amy greets the young emperor. A little girl in the lead flew into the young emperor's arms and grinned. Only then did the young emperor's hostility subside. "Little Amy, have you been slacking off in your cultivation all these years when I wasn't around?" His expression softened a little, which was a rare sight. He carried the little girl and slowly walked forward. The little girl tilted her head and said in embarrassment, "Amy is a little lazy. After all, cultivation is very boring. Look, I've lost a lot of hair because of this." The young emperor scratched the little girl's nose and then reached for the thin purple-robed man behind him. "You'll lose your teeth if you eat too much sweet food." The skinny purple-robed man muttered in a low voice, and then took out a handful of rainbow-colored sugar balls from his bosom. The young emperor took out 2 sweets, one into the little girl's mouth, and the other into his own. The little girl crossed her arms in the young emperor's arms and said smugly, "I'm not afraid of losing my teeth. Don't lie to me, Daban. They all say that I won't lose my teeth." The skinny purple-robed man named Daban, who the young emperor calls companion, did not say much. He distributed the candy in his hand to the rest of the children. With the candy in her mouth, the little girl looked at Jian Wushuang curiously with her big eyes. For some reason, Jian Wushuang was reminded of his childhood and his old brothers in the Divine Power universe when he saw the girl's red lips and white teeth. Young Emperor. Who is this big brother? The young emperor turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang. Then, he smiled and said, "He's my good friend. You have to call him Brother Jian." "Yes, yes, big brother Jian." The little girl smiled sweetly at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang smiled in return and subconsciously reached out to touch her small hair bun. The young emperor patted her gently. "Go and play. I'm going to see my imperial father." The little girl nodded and said, "Young emperor, don't make the emperor angry this time. He was really angry when you went back last time." The young emperor did not say anything. He just reached out and carried her on the rainbow bridge. After leaving the escort girl, the hostility on his body quietly rose again, and his face also darkened, as if he was a different person from before. He stepped onto the rainbow bridge and walked towards the heavenly court's grand gate. There were also more than 10 yen immortals guarding the heavenly gate. The leading 2 yen immortals in golden armor, upon seeing this fiendish expression, immediately made way for him and almost dropped their axes on the ground. The young emperor stepped into it, followed by Jian Wushuang and the others. Buzz, the flowing cloud water ripple spread between heaven and earth. Feeling the warm brilliance flowing around him, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. He saw countless majestic mountains and waterfalls that looked like jade belts embedded in them, forming a vast river. In the center of the heavenly court, a vast green jade hall was located in the clouds. A grand sun was shining behind it. Is this the heavenly court? Jian Wushuang looked at the magnificent and majestic momentum in front of him and was moved. In front of the green jade hall, there was a road paved with smooth jade that led to the heavenly gate. The young emperor took the lead and stepped onto the exquisite jade pathway, moving forward. After sighing in his heart, Jian Wushuang and the others followed. Feeling the brilliance around them, they did not say anything and headed straight for the heavenly court. Just as they were about to step into the heavenly court, the flowing clouds condensed into 2 figures in robes on the smooth jade-paved ground. "Greetings, young emperor." 2 figures that looked almost exactly the same bowed to the young emperor. "Get lost," the young emperor blurted and used his yen power to push the 2 away, stepping into the giant hall. As for the twin-like figures, they seemed to be used to it. After amicably bowing to everyone, they turned into clouds and dispersed. As he entered the green jade hall and stepped into the vast square, Jian Wushuang saw that hundreds of elders had already gathered. Every elder was surrounded by a layer of warm light. It was difficult to see their cultivation level, but one thing was certain. Every elder gathered here was not below Changqing's. Looking at the young emperor, who was filled with hostility, the 100-odd elders all cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, young emperor." The young emperor's expression softened slightly when he saw the elders, but he only said, "Let's go in." With that, he went straight into the main hall. A helpless look appeared on the faces of the elders. This banquet would probably not end well again. The young emperor sat down on the side of the emperor's throne with a cold expression. Then, the group of elders who had been waiting in the square entered the giant hall one by one. None of them spoke. They all had their hands crossed in their sleeves and were looking down at their surroundings. As the Yen Immortals entered one by one, the atmosphere in the Heaven's Expanse Palace became a little strange. Surrounded by many Yen Immortals, a handsome young man in a white court dress walked into the palace. Their eyes met, and the young emperor's face grew darker. It was the young man who broke the silence first. He said with a faint smile, "Second brother, Prince Jiu, greets eldest brother." Jian Wushuang looked at him with a glint of amusement in his eyes. The young man in white looked at Jian Wushuang subconsciously, as if he had sensed something. At this moment, the young emperor slowly walked down from the side of the emperor's throne with a gloomy and majestic aura. He slowly retreated, his expression unnatural. "Tell me, did you send them?" The young emperor's voice was cold and his eyes were filled with anger. The corners of Pants Joe's mouth twitched unconsciously. Big brother, what are you saying? Why don't I?" Before he could finish his sentence, a powerful and heavy slap landed on Prince Zhou's face. Immediately after that, he was kicked away by a powerful flying kick. This combination of skills was simply too fast. After a series of afterimages flashed past, the Immortals finally reacted, and the two of them had already flown out of the hall. "Brother Jian, let's go and watch the show together," Chun Qing said excitedly and pulled Jian Wushuang out of the hall. In the corridor, the young emperor was riding on Prince Zhou's body. He stretched out his two palms and began to slap him wildly. On the other hand, Prince Zhou's face was swelling rapidly. "Young emperor, stop fighting. The emperor will be here soon." One of the black-haired and black-bearded old men tried to stop him, but he did not dare to go forward. For a time, there were many voices of admonishment, but the young emperor did not seem to hear it and continued to slap left and right. "Prince Yen, that's enough." Prince Zhou, who was pressed to the ground, let out a furious roar. Just as he was about to attempt to resist, Chun Qing smiled evilly. He immediately released Yen power and firmly fixed both of Prince Zhou's arms, rendering him unable to move. "Chun Qing, don't be presumptuous. Why are you interfering in the fight between the princes?" A Yen immortal with an angry voice chided. Chun Qing glanced at him and then said disdainfully, "I'm going to interfere. If you have the guts, come and beat me up." "How dare you? You're behaving like a dog. Have you wasted all your cultivation?" The Yen immortal beside Prince Zhou pointed his halberd and shouted angrily. Chun Qing's expression suddenly turned cold, and his sword-like eyes shot toward him. The Yen immortal was about to continue scolding, but he saw this and immediately swallowed, retreating backward. For a moment, only Prince Zhou's anger and the young emperor's left and right slaps were left outside the hall. More than 200 elders in the heavenly court shook their heads and sighed at the sight. This was not the first time the young emperor had been so domineering. There had been a total of 5 banquets and he had fought 3 times. However, even though the emperor had some complaints about this, he never stopped it. He did not even punish or teach it a lesson. This also caused the banquet participants to be angry but not dare to speak out, afraid that the young emperor would be unhappy and stab them for no reason. With Chun Qing as his accomplice, the young emperor slapped Prince Zhou without restraint. Prince Zhou could only endure the humiliation. As for the Yen immortals he brought, although they were tempted, they did not dare to stop him. At this moment, a loud shout rang out. "Prince Yen, don't treat the heavenly court as your 6 heavens realm. Is the heavenly court a place where you can do whatever you want?" A man dressed in a plain court dress stepped into the green jade hall. His handsome brows were filled with coldness. The young emperor raised his head slowly when he heard that. He looked at him with his dark eyes, then let go of Prince Zhou who was under him, and walked toward him slowly. "What are you doing?" The rather valiant young man unconsciously took half a step back, his eyes revealing vigilance. The response he got was a strong and heavy slap. The young man seemed to have expected this. He dodged the attack with a slight tilt of his neck, but then he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. The young emperor kneed him in the stomach at an incredible speed, forcing him to lose his ability to resist. At the same time, he slapped him with his palm. Prince Zhou stood up in a sorry state. He covered his bruised face and glared at the young emperor, who was still abusing him. Then he raised his palm, which was surging with violent force. "Second young master, you've already done sneak attacks many times. This time, let's stop." Chun Qing's mocking voice rang out. At the same time, an even thinner Yen power blocked in front of Prince Zhou. Prince Zhou's eyes turned cold. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes as he looked at Chun Qing. "Chun Qing, what's the meaning of this?" "Nothing much. The heavens are watching what we do." "Oh right, I almost forgot. Second young master, you're already in the heavens." Chun Qing crossed his arms behind his head and said leisurely. The killing intent in his eyes grew stronger and stronger uncontrollably, but Prince Zhou only snorted coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, he retreated to the side and closed his eyes to recuperate. "Brother Jian." Chun Qing leaned toward Jian Wushuang and said mysteriously, "Guess who the young emperor is fighting?" Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "Another one of his brothers again?" Chongqing nodded. Third brother, Prince Yu. He could not help but laugh. Don't tell me he's going to beat up all of his brothers? I can't say for sure, Chongqing shrugged. But I think the emperor will probably arrive when the fourth one is beaten up. The valiant young man, Prince Yu, took dozens of slaps from the young emperor before he let out an angry roar and smashed his palm at the young emperor's face with a strong force. However, the space seemed to stagnate for a moment. The young emperor turned his head slightly and walked over. Then he took half a step back and kicked Prince Yu away. There was an uproar. The companion that Prince Yu brought could not help but step forward and say in a low voice, "Eldest young master, you are the crown prince. Why do you want to embarrass second young master and third young master in the heavenly court? Are you really so arrogant because of the emperor?" The young emperor glanced at him coldly, and a true sword surrounded by immortal chi quietly appeared in his hand. Seeing this, the purple-robed band took a step back and gritted his teeth. The heavenly court must not be stained with blood. Just at this moment, four figures in white court clothes walked into the green jade hall. However, after seeing this scene, the four figures took half a step back in tacit understanding and looked at the young emperor vigilantly. "All of you, come over." The young emperor withdrew his real sword and waved at them. "Yes," one of the young men replied. "Big brother, how have you been?" The atmosphere was heavy, and all the Yen immortals were looking at the square where a fight was about to happen. The young emperor sneered and took out a soft sword from his waist without a trace. The five people's expressions changed slightly. Among them, a thin young man stepped forward and said, "Big brother, stop. Don't make Imperial Father unhappy again." The young emperor acted as if he did not hear her and walked forward step by step with his sword in hand. Killing intent was revealed in his eyes without any concealment. Chongqing's expression changed slightly. "Brother Jian, the young emperor seems to have the intention to kill. Come with me to stop him." Jian Wushuang nodded. If the magnificent heavenly court was really stained with blood, the emperor who had yet to show himself would definitely not forgive the young emperor. The face of Prince Zhou, who was covering his cheek, was filled with joy. The expression in his eyes was as if he could not wait for them to start a fight on the spot. A total of 5 majestic forces filled the square in the green jade hall. All the princes in court attire were prepared for battle. The young emperor did not seem to be worried at all. He held the soft sword in his hand and moved forward firmly, as if he had entered a no-man's land. Just as Jian Wushuang and Chun Qing were about to stop them, a brilliant 7-colored charm appeared in the sky. The entire sky, which was filled with flowing clouds, changed at this moment. Jian Wushuang seemed to have realized something and looked over. A black-robed figure was formed from the clouds. He stepped on the colorful clouds and descended from the sky. It was as if the rules of the Great Path were flowing around him. "Is that Emperor Zhen Wuyang?" Jian Wushuang murmured in his heart. He was shocked by his momentum. With a casual palm strike, he directly suppressed the battle between the young emperor and the others, and yen power dissipated. Even Jian Wushuang could clearly feel that the yen power in his body had been suppressed. The man in the black robe stood in the middle of the square like a statue. The 5 people's expressions all changed. Then, they cupped their hands at the same time and said, "Greetings, Uncle Yu." The young emperor did not speak. He put the soft sword on his waist and said, "Uncle Yu." The black robe fluttered slightly, and a pair of turbid eyes slowly swept around. Finally, the man looked at the young emperor. "Young emperor, don't be angry anymore. The emperor will be here soon." As soon as he finished speaking, another voice that seemed to shake the world and carried supreme might resounded. "Are you killing your own family?" When all the Yen immortals gathered in the heaven court heard this voice, they all cupped their hands and said solemnly, "Greetings, Emperor." The hazy 7-colored sky split into 2 sides, and a majestic figure wearing the emperor's robe of mountains and rivers emerged. There were 99 figures behind him. Each of them was surrounded by a bright light, and the light wheels formed by yen power shone on the entire heavenly court. This made the majestic figure in the mountain river emperor's robe a little sad. However, any Yen immortal who could come to the heavenly court would not be so stupid to think so. The majestic figure that could ascend to the throne and annihilate dozens of emperors on his own was hundreds of millions of times more terrifying than what he revealed. Looking at the majestic emperor who stepped into the sky, Jian Wushuang finally saw his true face. In an instant, the atmosphere in the vast square of the giant hall was extremely tense. The angry question was obviously from the emperor. The young emperor looked up at Emperor Wei Yi, who was standing on the clouds, and said, "Imperial father, Prince Yen doesn't dare. Then what were you doing just now? Are you trying to stain the heavenly court with blood?" Another question was asked. Immediately after, Emperor Zhen Wuyang arrived at the vast square with endless power. "They are all your younger brothers. As the crown prince, not only did you not set an example, but you even lowered your status again and again. Do you really think I don't dare to punish you?" The young emperor did not say a word, and there was no fear in his lowered eyes. At this moment, the black-robed figure known as Uncle Yu slowly came before Emperor Zhen Wuyang and said in a low voice, "Emperor, the young emperor has not made a big mistake yet. It is not unforgivable. You can deal with him after the banquet." The majestic figure glanced at the young emperor and then at Uncle Yu. A hint of helplessness flashed in his eyes. "Forget it. Let's start the banquet first." With that, he took the lead and walked into the main hall, followed by 99 elders with colorful lights on their backs. "Yes." The hundreds of Yen immortals responded in unison. Prince Zhou glared at Chun Qing and the rest, then strode into the main hall. This farce finally ended with the arrival of Emperor Zhen Wuyang. The young emperor looked at them deeply and then went to Jian Wushuang and the others. He seemed to be a little tired and forced a smile. "Let's go. The banquet is about to start." "Young emperor, are you hurt anywhere?" Chang Qing was a little worried. He shook his head, then stepped into the hall under the guidance of the thin purple-robed man. In the main hall, Emperor Zhen Wuyang sat on the emperor's throne. Beside him, the young emperor with a gloomy expression sat on the side. Meanwhile, Uncle Yu stood behind the emperor like a black statue. In the vast hall, the elders with light wheels of various colors on their backs sat on both sides in a row. A little lower were the princes in white court robes. Under the young emperor's instructions, Jian Wushuang and the others sat with the 6 princes, but they were clearly separated. Sitting in the misty clouds, Jian Wushuang looked down and ignored the judgmental looks of the princes. Then, Chun Xiu, who was sitting beside him, said in a low voice, "Brother Jian, I really didn't expect to be able to come to the heavenly court of Zhen Wuyang one day. Please don't do anything stupid." Jian Wushuang looked at him and smiled. Chun Xiu nodded. "Don't worry. I know the severity of this." From time to time, in the midst of low-pitched conversations, goddesses who came on clouds brought out plates of delicacies and fruits. Zhen Wuyang sat on the emperor's throne and looked at the heavenly court with a smile. He then let out a long sigh. From this, Jian Wushuang learned that there had only been 5 banquets in the heavenly court since the beginning. It was held every 1 Hua year. Jian Wushuang did not know exactly how long this 1 Hua year would be, but his initial estimate was that it was very likely to be the time to cut off 10 silver rivers. Time had long been the most meaningless thing here. After becoming a Yen immortal, one's lifespan was endless. Other than the destruction of external forces, most things would have little effect on Yen immortals. After all, the creation of the great Daos and the ultimate order in a world could very likely have been the work of a certain Yen immortal. The elders who carried light wheels of different colors were so powerful that even Chen Qing was afraid of them. They were the first elders who helped Zhen Wuyang to open up the heavenly court and become emperors. They were deeply trusted by Zhen Wuyang, and even the 6 princes were not as important as them. It was an honor to be able to attend a banquet in the heavenly court. Therefore, even an unremarkable Yen immortal was a respected existence in the heavenly domain controlled by the Zhen Wuyang. As the table in front of him was gradually piled with precious fruits, the beautiful fairies also overwhelmed him. Chun Qing, who was sitting beside Jian Wushuang, fixed his bright eyes on one of the fairies. "Fairy Guang, it's me. Don't you remember me? I'm Chang Qing, the one who controls Jingchuan." We talked about it in the wind platform last time. Changqing's eyes lit up as he chatted with the fairy, who was bending over to pour wine. The fairy pursed her lips and smiled. I don't remember. It doesn't matter if you remember or not. After the banquet is over, I'll still be waiting for you at the wind platform. How about it? Changqing grinned. The fairy smiled and did not answer. She took the jade pot and left. There's a chance. Changqing exclaimed in a low voice, extremely excited. Jian Wushuang, who had heard the whole story, smiled, picked up the cup of wine, and sipped it. As these fairies retreated, nearly 30 more fairies rode on clouds and arrived. In the center of the hall, they danced, and the sleeves formed by yen power set off their graceful figures, looking extremely beautiful. Brother Jian, I can see that you're not that old. Do you have someone in your heart? If not, this elder brother can help you matchmake. Changqing walked over with a glass of wine, a mysterious smile on his face. Don't. You should worry about your own problems first. My heart already belongs to someone, and I will never forget it. Jian Wushuang replied firmly. When Changqing heard this, he nodded. Brother Jian's Dao heart is firm. No wonder you could reach the yen immortal realm with such a heart. He did not answer. Looking at the dancing fairy in front of him and the slightly noisy surroundings, Jian Wushuang actually sat down. Chunqing did not know whether to laugh or cry. After having a drink with Chunqiu, he began to appreciate the dance. Shen Wuyang sat on the throne and looked at the young emperor from time to time, as if he wanted to say something to ease the atmosphere. But the young emperor did not seem to feel it at all. He just kept drinking wine. In the end, Shen Wuyang could not help but lean forward and ask in a low voice, Yenner, how have you been all these years? Imperial Father, I'm doing pretty well, the young emperor said calmly and then said nothing else. Isn't the 6 heavens too far away? After this banquet is over, you can come and stay by my side. Shen Wuyang looked at him and asked. The young emperor's lips curled into a sinister smile. I think I'd better not. I'm in the 6 heavens realm, and some yen immortals are eager for me to die. If I stay with Imperial Father, I'm afraid it will be even more chaotic. Hearing this, Shen Wuyang frowned. Then, he looked around the hall with an oppressive and majestic gaze. Eventually, he stopped in front of the 6 princes. Yenner, do you have any evidence? Evidence? Most of them are dead, the young emperor said. Then, he held the jade pot and drank directly from the mouth of the pot. A trace of gloominess flashed across Prince Zhou's eyes as he looked at the young emperor who was sitting on the side of the head in such a frivolous manner. However, he concealed it immediately. He could not understand why his imperial father had chosen such a useless person who could not cultivate to be the crown prince and was so biased towards him. A large amount of resources had pushed him from a good-for-nothing to a yen immortal. Almost every drop of blood in his meridians was made from the best resources in the heavenly domain. Since his imperial father was unwilling to do it, he would do it on his behalf. The death of a piece of trash was 10,000 times better than the death of the entire Great Sea region. At that time, even the imperial father would understand him. A cruel sneer unconsciously appeared on his face, but he was met with the young emperor's gaze. Shocked, Prince Zhou quickly put away his expression and pretended to drink. The young emperor retracted his disdainful gaze and unconsciously looked at the only person who was acting alone. In the heavenly court, where fairy music was heard and goddesses were dancing, this guy actually closed his eyes and meditated. He was really unique. What a strange guy. Is he not interested at all? With this in mind, the young emperor flicked a touch of yen power on Changqing's body, then pouted slightly. Changqing understood and elbowed Jian Wushuang. Brother Jian, please wake up. I have something good to show you. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and looked at Changqing helplessly. Changqing laughed in a low voice. He then opened his mouth and breathed out a mouthful of yen power towards the fairies who were close at hand. Yen power turned into a strange wind and rose from the ground without any warning. It directly blew the skirts of the fairies up. For a time, a beautiful scene lit up. Ah! The fairy maidens cried out in alarm and were already in a mess. each of them hurriedly holding onto the hem of their skirts that had been blown up by the strange wind. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was speechless. He shook his head and said, "Brother Chun, stop joking." Chun Qing scratched his head. Before he could speak again, Prince Zhou, who had already sensed it, suddenly slammed the table and shouted in anger, "Chun Qing, how dare you!" The heavenly court was dead silent. After Prince Zhou finished shouting, he immediately turned to Emperor Zhenwuyang and said solemnly, "Imperial Father, Chun Qing has openly wreaked havoc in the heavenly court. He has no respect for the law and clearly does not respect you. He deserves to be executed for his crime. It's not me, I didn't. No one saw where this evil wind came from. So how can you be so sure that it was me? It's clearly a trap." Chang Qing stood up and said angrily. Zhenwuyang shook his head helplessly. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Chang Qing, get out. Without my summons, you are not allowed to return to the heavenly court." "Yes," Chun Qing agreed dejectedly. However, when he turned around, he raised his brows and glanced at Prince Zhou. After this little episode, the fairies who were forced to reveal their true colors no longer had the face to dance. They all covered their faces and ran out of the heavenly court. The first half of the banquet ended hastily. Then, Zhenwuyang's lengthy speech was heard. Since he could not meditate again, Jian Wushuang decided to observe each of the Yen Immortals. The elders with light wheels of various colors, who were the elders who had followed Emperor Zhenwuyang in battle, were the first echelon. They had an extremely deep yen power and an unfathomable realm that even Chun Qing could not compare to. Jian Wushuang could vaguely guess that they might have already taken that step and reached another unknown and mysterious realm. As for the second group, it was a group of Yen Immortals, with Chun Qing being the best. They were at the peak of the Yen Immortal stage, but they were unable to break through. Jian Wushuang was in the middle of the second and third group. After all, ordinary Yen Immortals, even 4 or 5 Yen Immortals, could not cause him any effective damage. Even if he were to fight with Chun Qing, Jian Wushuang was confident that he would be able to retreat safely even if he was no match for him. What would be above the peak of the Yen Immortal stage? Old Master, what kind of existence was he? And what role did his master play? No one could give him an answer. He could only get closer and closer to everything. As Emperor Zhenwuyang's emotional speech came to an end, a piece of news was transmitted to every Yen Immortal's ears along with Yen power. "Snatch the peach," Jian Wushuang murmured softly and then looked at Emperor Zhenwuyang in confusion. A green jade immortal peach enshrouded in a myriad of beauty appeared in the emperor's hand. "Everyone, just like before, this peach contains the opportunity of the great Tao. It is the most indispensable part to break through to the Yen Immortal cultivation realm. If you can get it, it will be of great benefit." At this moment, all the Yen Immortals could not suppress their joy. The most important part of the feast, the fight for the peach, had finally begun. Those who were able to attend this banquet were all the most powerful Yen Immortals in the heavenly domain. Ordinary supreme treasures started to pale in terms of utility. Only things related to breaking through Wang Mi could he attract them. This peach contained a great opportunity for a breakthrough. Once obtained, it was basically one step out of the cultivation realm of Yen Immortal. However, there was only one immortal peach, and there were more than 300 Yen Immortals participating. The competition would be intense. And the Yen Immortals who were likely to be the runners were still eager to try. After all, even if they failed, the emperor would still reward them handsomely. The hot topic of fighting for the peaches had always been the 6th son of Emperor Zhenwuyang. Just Prince Zhou alone had won 2 immortal peaches. This time he was also sure to win. As for the young emperor, he had never participated in the battle for the peaches. The immortal peach will land in 1 year. The person who can last 10 days will be the final winner. Zhenwuyang stated the rules, and with a flip of his palm, the fruit that was enshrouded in the brilliance of the great Tao fell through the palace of the heavenly court and landed on the entire land of the heavenly court. "Everyone, please begin," Emperor Zhenwuyang said with a smile. Due to the rules, other than the few elders, all Yen Immortals can participate. However, the 6 princes can only bring 1 Yen Immortal into the arena. Prince Zhu took the lead to ask for the order. Behind him stood a white-robed Yen Immortal, who was also his companion who had taken care of him since he was young. Following Prince Zhou's request, Prince Yu, Prince Qian, and the others also joined in the battle for the peach. The 6 princes were all on the move. Although they all had friendly smiles on their faces, there was already an undercurrent. This was the best time to show off. It was directly related to their position in the hearts of Emperor Zhen Wuyang and the 100 elders. In the past few fights for the peach, Prince Zhou had become an existence that stood above everyone else. Even the elders had taken a liking to him and had the intention of replacing the young emperor. Therefore, all the princes tried their best to push their cultivation to the peak. After all, they could only get more attention by reaching the end. Just as all the Yen Immortals finished their preparations and were heading down to the heavenly realm, a calm voice rang out in the heavenly court. "Imperial Father, I'll participate in the battle for the peach this time." The Zhen Wuyang and all the Yen Immortals in the heavenly court were stunned for a moment, and then they all looked at him. The young emperor stood up slowly and glanced at the group of Yen Immortals. "Yenner, are you sure?" Zhen Wuyang also stood up, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. "I've never participated in it before, which is why some people have ignored my existence. This time, I just want them to know what's important and what's not." The young emperor's voice was low and majestic as he looked at the Yen Immortals below him without hesitation. The 6 princes looked at each other at the same time, and their expressions were completely different. Prince Zhou did not speak, but his hands were tightly clenched under his sleeves. "Good. Yenner, it's been a long time since I've seen your cultivation level. Today is a good opportunity for me to take a look." Zhen Wuyang laughed heartily. At the same time, he waved his sleeve and said, "Someone, tell Chongqing to get his ass in here. Tell him to accompany Yenner to the event." "No need, Imperial Father. I don't need Chongqing this time," the young emperor said and looked at Jian Wushuang. Their eyes met. He said, "Brother Jian, can you come with me?" All the Yen Immortals looked at Jian Wushuang again. Zhen Wuyang also looked at Jian Wushuang. The divine consciousness of an emperor was beyond imagination and could easily see through everything he wanted to know. Soon he was a little confused. This kid was only in the Yen Immortal stage. Other than his amazing talent, his physique seemed to be a little unique. Even he could not see through him. At the same time, he had an indescribable feeling. Even though this youth's Yen Immortal realm was not that profound, he looked extremely comfortable, as if there was some unknown level of connection. Zhen Wuyang retracted his divine consciousness and nodded. "Go, Yenner." To the silent and shady eldest prince who never liked to reveal his talents. Once he had decided on something, even as an emperor, it was difficult for him to change his mind. The young emperor suddenly came in front of Jian Wushuang and said, "Let's go. It seems that they can't wait any longer." Without much hesitation, Jian Wushuang nodded and walked out of the heavenly court. The skinny purple-robed man suddenly grabbed Jian Wushuang's arm. He seemed to want to say something to Jian Wushuang with his cloudy eyes, but in the end, he only said in a low voice, "I'll leave the young emperor to you." The young emperor walked forward and patted the thin purple-robed man's shoulder before walking out of the heavenly court with Jian Wushuang. The flowing clouds swirled, and the power was vast. Standing outside the heavenly court, all the Yen Immortals scattered down. The 6 princes also brought their respective companions and descended to the heavenly realm. The fight for the peach, which involved over 300 Yen Immortals, began. Emperor Zhen Wuyang, who was sitting in the heavenly court, waved his hand, and an ethereal picture scroll formed by Yen power was reflected in the hall. The scene within the scroll was the brilliant heavenly realm. "Everyone, guess who will be the winner of this battle for the peach?" Zhen Wuyang asked. "It should be second prince." A long-bearded old man stroked his beard and laughed. Another black-robed elder retorted, "The 4th prince is not weak either. The 3rd prince is the one who might be able to take the immortal peach. If I'm not wrong, he has a basic understanding of the immortal style." The hundreds of elders in the heavenly court all expressed their opinions, but they all pointed to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th princes. Zhen Wuyang seemed to have another answer. He looked at Uncle Yu, who was standing next to him like a statue, and said, "Yu Chong, what do you think?" Uncle Yu raised his head and looked at the sky with his dark and deep eyes, as if he could see through the clouds. "The little guy beside the young emperor is not ordinary. So you also think that he'll win the immortal peach this time?" The young emperor is a calm and composed person. He won't do anything he's not confident in. Once he makes a move, everything will be set in stone. After hearing what Uncle Yu said, Zhen Wuyang stopped talking. Together with the other elders, they carefully looked at the painting. Among the vast clouds, two black-robed figures dressed as rangers sat upright in the clouds. They did not seem to be in a hurry to fight for the immortal peach, but rather seemed to be traveling. The heavenly realm that carried the entire heavenly court was completely formed by rivers and rivers, and it was quite mysterious and vast. "How confident do you think we are to make it to the end of this?" The young emperor shouted on the empty flowing cloud, as if he was afraid that Jian Wushuang could not hear him. Jian Wushuang replied, "I don't know. I'll try my best." "Then what if my brothers come to kill us again?" "That's easy. We'll just kill our way back. But I think they'll be more restrained in the heavenly court. At most, they'll just do some small tricks. No matter what, I'm going to get the immortal peach this time. There can't be a single mistake." "You're so confident? I can feel that your disciples have a deep resentment towards you. Perhaps they will join forces to surround you." "What, are you scared?" The young emperor raised his eyebrows and asked. "Of course I'm scared. I've been dragged into this for no reason. I still want to live for a few more years," Jian Wushuang said leisurely as he lay in the clouds. The young emperor pouted. "Those who can become Yen immortals don't care about longevity. You, an old monster who has lived for God knows how many years, are also so attached to immortality." Jian Wushuang felt very helpless. It had been less than 10 million years since he started cultivating, but now he was called an old monster, which added to his old age for no reason. Moreover, he could not explain it as there were too many implications. It was extremely likely that he would cause unnecessary trouble because of a slip of the tongue. Even the Yen immortals of the Great Yen domain would find it hard to imagine a Yen immortal with a lifespan of only a few million years. After some perfunctory talk, the young emperor pulled the two of them into the heavenly realm. In the roaring and surging water, two figures were moving forward. A Yen immortal who was also participating in the fight for the peach passed by. He only glanced at them and quickly dodged. Until the very last moment, none of the Yen immortals were willing to fight with the princes of Emperor Zhen Wuyang. After all, other than the young emperor whose strength was not announced, the other 6 had once fought to a draw with 3 Yen immortals. In addition, each prince could also bring along a companion with a profound cultivation base, which could basically eliminate any single Yen immortal. Of course, erase did not mean killing directly, but teleporting out of the game. In the end, only the princes were left to fight for the peaches. Even so, the Yen immortals who were able to participate in the Heavenly Court's banquet were still in a rush for it. Although it was impossible to obtain immortal peaches, there were countless opportunities in the heavenly realm of the Heavenly Court. If he could obtain even a trace of immortal enlightenment somewhere, it would be a great transformation. Therefore, apart from the few princes, most of the people who participated in the peach fight were after the supreme opportunity. The huge river stood for eternity, and the vegetation was lush. Every blade of grass, every tree, every mountain, and every river in the heavenly realm already had the fate of a living being. As they shuttled through it, the Yen power in their bodies was sublimating at a subtle speed. At the same time, there were also immortal spirits that inherited the fate of the heavenly Tao, which were very unfriendly to these intruders. Unfortunately, when Jian Wushuang and the young emperor were preparing to cross the river on a reed butt, an unknown immortal spirit at the bottom of the water raised a huge wave and threw them into the water. Fortunately, the immortal spirit in the water did not have any evil intentions. After teasing them for a while, it disappeared. "Damn it! It's really impossible to guard against things like this." Jian Wushuang, who had reached the shore in a sorry state, fell on his back. After the previous big voyage, he developed some resistance to water. He was afraid of encountering the giant sea sky octopus again, an unknown and terrifying creature. The young emperor's performance was not much better than Jian Wushuang's. He was also panting slightly and looked helpless. Since the water route is not easy to take, then let's take the mountain route. 1 year seems sufficient, but in this vast heavenly realm, it is not enough. Jian Wushuang analyzed and looked at the wild forest. The young emperor nodded. Up to you. However, just as the two were about to plan the route, an immortal spirit that looked like a giant ape but had a dragon's head quietly poked out its huge head from the forest in front of them. The black hole-like nostrils spewed out turbid breath, which was far more violent than a hurricane. Jian Wushuang and the young emperor looked at each other and saw a touch of bitterness in each other's eyes. Boom! A Yen Immortal was defeated with a single palm strike. At this moment, the space between Prince Zhou's handsome brows was filled with gloominess. Behind him, dozens of Yen Immortals had gathered. A moment later, Prince Zhou said in a low voice, "Go and check in groups. Try not to cause a big conflict with the Yen Immortal who is following Prince Yen. However, if you can eliminate them directly, don't hold back." The dozens of Yen Immortals agreed at the same time and scattered all over the heavenly realm. Do you think Prince Yen will get the immortal peach this time? The white-robed Yen Immortal revealed a strange smile. Second young master, you must be joking. Do you think a weak and sick young emperor can achieve anything? The prince furrowed his brows and said in a deep voice, "My friend, watch your words and actions. You'd better keep the fact that Prince Yen is sick to yourself. Otherwise, if my imperial father finds out, I'll be implicated too." "Yes, second young master." The white-robed Yen Immortal lowered his head and admitted his mistake. "In other words, he is no match for you." Prince Zhou did not speak, but his brows slowly relaxed. "That's right. If it wasn't for imperial father's protection, this shameful guy would have died before he was even born." With the true blood and fate energy of an emperor flowing in their bodies, whether it was in terms of the level of life or the perception of the great Tao, they were far superior to the top cultivators of the same realm. This advantage was even more obvious after entering the realm of the Yen Immortal. However, there was a special case among the 7 of them, and that special case was Prince Yen. As the eldest son of an emperor, his life force and physique had been extremely weak since birth, and he almost died. He was also accompanied by all kinds of illnesses and could not cultivate at all. This was simply a humiliation. As the person who controlled the great Tao and created the heavenly court with the bloodline of an emperor, he had actually suffered from such an unimaginable illness. He really could not figure out how his imperial father, who had a domineering mind, could have a bloodline that was sick and sick. Not even a single treasure in the heavenly realm could cure him. It was like some kind of curse that accompanied him until his death. The young emperor who was sick became the exclusive property of Emperor Zhenwuyang. Other than the 6 princes and their companions, no one else knew about it. How can a guy who spits out blood from the slightest bit of strenuous exercise be worthy of competing with me? A glint of pleasure appeared in the depths of Prince Zhou's eyes. He thought to himself, "Since I can't stop you from coming to the heavenly court, I'll stomp you under my feet ruthlessly in front of Imperial Father and the others this time." What's the approximate location of the immortal peach? Second Prince. There is a special fluctuation in the direction of Jiao Province. 4th Prince and 5th Prince are likely to be there. Go to Jiao Province and spread the news that all the Yen Immortals along the way must kill Prince Yen. Ong! A deafening roar reverberated through the forest, and at the same time, the ancient trees began to collapse. An extremely huge monster ape ran through the forest, its strong body easily crushing the giant trees in its way. Upon closer inspection, 2 figures dressed like rangers were lying on the monster ape's broad silver-furred back, seemingly satisfied. Jian Wushuang burped and gave the young emperor a thumbs up. Just a moment ago, a fish the size of a small mountain had entered the stomach of the 2 of them and the monster. What Jian Wushuang did not expect was that this prince, who always had a gloomy face and looked like someone owed him cash, was actually an expert at roasting fish. With just a piece of rock salt and a pile of towering trees, a delicious grilled fish was simply roasted. Jian Wushuang had long given up on food. The reason why he wanted to grill the fish was that when he was fighting with the monster ape under him, a fish immortal with intelligence floated up from the water to join in the fun. Coincidentally, a stray sword strike from Jian Wushuang accidentally hit it and sent it to heaven. Adhering to the principle of not wasting anything, Jian Wushuang reluctantly took it out of the water and prepared to sacrifice it. The young emperor took over and grilled the fish to delicious perfection. "You ate my grilled fish, so you have to help me get the immortal peach." The young emperor raised his eyebrows and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was satisfied. Jian Wushuang patted the monster's broad hairy back helplessly. "Can I say no? More than half of the fish went into this guy's stomach. No, you didn't eat any less than this big guy. You should put in more effort when it comes to snatching the peach," the young emperor said seriously. "It's tough to put food on the table," Jian Wushuang said leisurely, which was considered an agreement. After that, the two humans and one beast continued to travel leisurely through the heavenly realm. At this moment, the elders in the heavenly court who were watching the scene in the heavenly realm all had strange expressions. Even Jin Wuyang, who was on the emperor's throne, twitched his mouth. What was originally an extremely tense fight for the peach had suddenly turned into a road to survival for the two of them. "My heaven-hanging wood. This kid just lit it up to be used as fire to roast fish." Jin Wuyang's heart was bleeding. The heaven-hanging wood was the top raw material for the creation of the heavenly court, and it could not grow in the heavenly realm without the fate energy of an emperor. And now, the heaven-hanging trees growing in the heavenly realm were all cleared by the young emperor and burned to the ground just to roast fish. However, when he saw that the young emperor's face was no longer gloomy, Emperor Jin Wuyang suppressed his complaints and began to look at the two-person group with interest. "Young emperor, is he not taking this seriously?" In the heavenly court, some of the elders could not help but discuss in low voices. "I can't say for sure. From the looks of it, the young emperor doesn't seem to want to fight for the immortal peach. In my opinion, the young emperor's actions are a wise one. It shows your brother's demeanor and humility. If you keep talking, I'll punish you to go to the heavenly realm and look after the heaven-hanging wood for me." The heavenly court was silent. Sitting on the monster ape's back, Jian Wushuang looked at the chain iron plate on the monster ape's neck with a strange expression. "What is that chain iron plate of yours? It can even imprison a yen immortal?" The young emperor nodded. "That's right. Unless you can take that step, none of the yen immortals will be able to escape my control." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang felt awkward. If it was not for the imprisoning chains, he would not have been a prisoner for a few days. The young emperor seemed to have noticed the knot in his heart and said, "This is a supreme treasure in my imperial father's hands. It's called the sky-devouring lock. My imperial father gave it to me when I took over the Six Heavens realm. Also, it wasn't me who trapped you at that time. It was those blind little bastards." Jian Wushuang did not take what happened to heart. After all, he had been a prisoner for less than a day and he had eliminated a yen immortal without suffering a great loss. However, he was curious about where he was caught. Before Jian Wushuang could open his mouth to ask, an indescribable sense of life and death crisis burst forth from his divine sense. Without thinking, he released yen power and patted the monster ape's head. The monster ape understood tacitly. Its huge body suddenly stopped and then lay on the ground. A total of more than 10 rays of majestic yen power swept over from all directions, almost brushing past Jian Wushuang and the young emperor's heads. A large area of the forest was cut in half, and a terrifying power exploded. Jian Wushuang and the young emperor stood in the air with cold faces. If he had been hit by the attack just now, he would have been seriously injured and eliminated on the spot. Then 11 powerful yen immortals appeared and looked at the two of them with strange expressions. "A bunch of trash. You dare to hurt me in the heavenly realm?" The young emperor's face was dark and his eyes were dark. If it was not for Jian Wushuang, he would have been severely injured even if he did not get eliminated. The leader was a yen immortal, the one who had previously talked big outside the heavenly gate, Wuxia. At this moment, he was holding a horsetail whisk in his hand, looking like an immortal. He did not care about the young emperor's insults. Instead, he smiled and said, I'm sorry for offending you, but I had no choice. I hope you can quit voluntarily so that we don't have to fight." The young emperor's eyes were cold. "Did the prince send you here?" Fu Jie did not speak. Instead, he flicked his horsetail whisk and said softly, "Young emperor, please withdraw now to avoid a big fight." "Bastard, you're looking for death," he roared in anger. Not only did he not back off when facing the 11 yen immortals, he even attacked them. A thin and long flexible sword stirred the wind and clouds, bringing with it a supreme power that pressed down on Fujie. A look of disbelief flashed in Fujie's eyes. He then laughed coldly, and the horsetail whisk in his hand covered the sky. "Everyone, attack!" The horsetail whisk expanded 1,000,000 feet in the wind and descended with a bearing as it swept away. At the same time, the other 10 yen immortals moved as well, and a vast amount of yen power smashed toward the young emperor. He would try his best to make him withdraw from the battle with one strike. However, in the next moment, an extremely sharp sword intent, caught in the wind, suddenly slashed forward like a cloth being torn. The horsetail whisk that was about to cover the sky was directly cut into two by this sword intent that had quietly risen. The young emperor also stabbed out from the crack. The terror of life and death surged into his heart. Fu Jie subconsciously tilted his head to the side and barely dodged the unparalleled sword intent. A drop of dark red immortal blood rolled down from the slender cut on his neck, soaking his white robe on his shoulder. Fu Jie recovered from his shock and looked at the young emperor with eyes full of hatred. "Don't hold back. Attack with all your might," he shouted loudly, and immediately controlled the horsetail whisk in his hand, which had been cut off by an inch, to attack. The young emperor stood where he was fearlessly, a dark domain with him as the center spread out like vines. Fu Jie, whose mind was clouded by hatred, did not notice the slight change in the air around him. He spread his halberd and was about to smash it at him. However, the air around him seemed to have become muddy, and he felt that the release of yen power in his body had slowed down. The other yen immortals had the same feeling. Time seemed to have stretched on for a very long time. Fu Jie felt that he had been gliding in the air for a very long time, but he had yet to land. The young emperor's gloomy face gradually enlarged, and at the same time, a figure holding a broken sword slowly appeared. His cold eyes were exactly the same. "No, why are there two young emperors?" What responded to him was a sword intent that was almost terrifying to the extreme. Each of the multicolored swords reflected a 7-colored radiance in the air. The brilliant rainbow shadows connected with each other and carried an endless killing intent as they all slashed toward Fu Jie. The yen immortal's body exploded in an instant. With just one sword move, a yen immortal's body was cut in half. Fu Jie's immortal body shattered and turned into dust. At the same time, a pill-sized immortal source escaped from it and fled in a panic. The young emperor clenched his fist from a distance, and the surrounding space rippled. It was like an invisible hand that directly took the immortal source back. It was as if a heart was beating vigorously. Fu Jie's extremely frightened voice rang out from the celestial source. "Young emperor, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. I won't target you anymore. Let me go. I quit voluntarily." The young emperor looked calm. "Tell me, who sent you to kill me?" Fu Jie's immortal source was silent for a moment, as if it was struggling. In the end, it said with difficulty, It's second young master." He was not surprised to hear this answer, and there was not even the slightest ripple in his eyes. "Young emperor, this is the heavenly realm, you can't—" Before he could even finish his sentence, the young emperor had crushed his immortal source. In the heavenly realm, he killed a yen immortal. The yen immortals around were all shocked. They did not think that the young emperor would really dare to kill him. This was the heavenly realm that had the heavenly court. One of the rules set by the emperor was that the heavenly court must not be stained with blood. But now the young emperor had killed a yen immortal in the heavenly realm. They all took a step back, fear flashing in their eyes. Some things were destined to be irreversible once they started. When Jian Wushuang, who was holding the broken sword, killed a yen immortal without any restraint, the remaining 9 Yen Immortals' fighting spirit was replaced by fear. Then, they all scattered and fled in all directions without any backbone. However, how could they leave so easily? Jian Wushuang, who adhered to the principle of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots, directly released the Star River Lake Sea Sword intent and slashed down with a majestic star move. It was an ordinary slash, but it seemed to sweep up the surrounding space of 1,000,000 miles. It also contained the power of the stars, sealing every inch of space where the sword was pointed. At the same time, countless beams of light that were condensed from sword intent rose from the ground and swept up. This was an explosive strike. Even Yen Immortals would be helpless against this. 3 Yen Immortals could not dodge in time and were devoured on the spot, not even leaving behind a trace of immortal source. The young emperor also moved forward like a ghost. Every time he attacked, he would directly erase a Yen Immortal's immortal source. In this short moment, 6 Yen Immortals were killed. Their speed was too fast, so fast that the emperor and the group of elders did not even have time to attack before only 2 of the Yen Immortals were left. Finally, just as Jian Wushuang's sword was about to land, the 2 Yen Immortals under the sword disappeared. Buzz, the space rippled, and the 2 Yen Immortals who were scared out of their wits fell into the palace of the heavenly court. Jian Wushuang could not control his strength, and the Tarot Divine sword in his hand almost threw him out. The young emperor raised his head and looked at the heavenly court's direction with a cold gaze. "Prince Yen, do you know you've broken the law?" A voice filled with irrepressible anger resounded in the heaven realm. It was the voice of Emperor Zhen Wuyang. "Prince Yen doesn't know which heavenly rule he broke. Please tell me." The young emperor said coldly, unafraid. "The heavenly court cannot be stained with blood. But you killed Yen Immortal in the heavenly court. You still refuse to admit your guilt." Hearing this, the young emperor sneered. "It's true that I killed Yen Immortal, but this is not the heavenly court, but the heavenly realm. Which rule did I break?" The heavenly realm was deathly silent. In the end, an extremely angry groan came from the direction of the heavenly court, and everything returned to peace. "You bastard!" He slapped the table in front of him, and Emperor Yang's lips trembled in anger. All the elders did not say a word. The scene in the heavenly realm just now was all seen. The performance of those 2 people was too shocking, especially the young man with the broken sword. He could easily kill a Yen Immortal of the same realm as him with ease. It was unbelievable even to them. "Emperor, please calm down. The young emperor will be more restrained in the following journey." "Uncle," you consoled him in a low voice. Emperor Zhen Wuyang closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. At this moment, the 2 Yen Immortals that were saved knelt on the ground in fear. "Thank you, Emperor, for your kindness. Where is Chang Qing?" "Emperor, I'm here." A middle-aged man in green robes hurriedly ran in from outside the hall. "Throw these 2 guys out. They're never allowed to step into the heavenly court again." Emperor Yang of Jinwu placed his hand on his forehead and said without any doubt. Chang Qing smiled and said, "Understood." Then he smiled and flew out of the heavenly court, 1 in each hand, as if he was carrying little chicks. All the elders looked at the scroll again with a hint of anxiety in their eyes. The originally unsuspecting outcome had changed. It was broken by 2 guys who did not follow the rules at all. Everything had become interesting. Ever since the heavenly domain had expanded to the extreme and Zhen Wuyang became the new emperor, these elders had not fought a single battle. They had not even used yen power for a long time. Following the rules and spending days after days of lifespan seemed to have piqued his interest. They were all filled with anticipation and curiosity. In the heavenly realm, the 12 Yen Immortals who came to surround him were dealt with. Jian Wushuang slowly let out a breath and put the Tarot Divine sword back into its sheath. "Brother Jian, you're indeed powerful." The young emperor looked at him and smiled, some color returning to his pale face. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and said, "If it is possible, the best decision is to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, in case there are uncontrollable changes in the future." The young emperor nodded. He realized that some of his views were surprisingly in line with Jian Wushuang's. In order to avoid any changes in the following journey, Jian Wushuang had already decided not to let a Yen immortal escape when the battle started. The young emperor naturally also decided to kill Wuxia. That was the beginning. Jian Wushuang kicked the mountain-like monster ape on the ground. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. The monster ape had been observing the situation and had been lying on the ground and playing dead the moment the fight had started. Sensing that the crisis was over, the big guy hurriedly got up and looked at Jian Wushuang with its dragon-like big head. Hey, I'm your master. You should know who you're trying to please." The young emperor pretended to be dissatisfied. Jian Wushuang leaped onto the monster ape's back. Right at this moment, a rainbow-colored ripple appeared in the entire heavenly realm. A pillar of light that seemed to hold up the clouds reached up to the heavens. "The immortal peach has appeared," the young emperor said softly. Jian Wushuang also noticed the seven-colored light pillar and his calm heart started to tremble. That level of yen power was extremely special, but it seemed to fit with the shackles of some kind of opportunity. It was a great temptation to every yen immortal. The appearance of the immortal peach also meant that an even more intense battle had begun. The battle of the seven suns for the peach officially began. In the vast heavenly realm, almost at the same time as the pillar of light rose, nearly 100 figures with great momentum swept across the wilderness. Congratulations to the fourth prince for obtaining the immortal peach. A handsome young man in a white court robe stood on the peak of a mountain with a misty mountain. He was holding a glazed immortal peach in his hand, which seemed to contain a great opportunity. Behind him stood close to 20 powerful yen immortals. The handsome young man was Prince Qian, Prince Yan's fourth brother. The immortal peach was constantly emitting a weak aura. Relying on his five senses, he rushed to the continent at the center of the heavenly realm almost immediately. He cut open the divine mountain and obtained the immortal peach. A smug expression appeared on his face. This was his first time obtaining an immortal peach. In the previous peach-snatching competitions, he had never been the leader. It had always been Prince Zhou. However, this time the winner would probably change. The first person to obtain the immortal peach was almost certain of the outcome. In fact, they only needed to hide in the following period of time. Apart from the planned encirclement, it would be too easy to pass 7 days. However, Prince Qian did not think that victory was already in his grasp. His brothers were not easy to deal with, and they were all extremely powerful in terms of strength and influence. It had been almost 20 days. Other than his big brother who posed no threat, the other yen immortals who participated in the fight for the peach were most likely divided into different camps. Thinking of this, he reached out and took out a wisp of energy from the immortal peach and handed it to a yen immortal beside him. "Take this aura and leave. Go as far as you can. Find Prince Yen along the way and try to make him the target of everyone." The middle-aged yen immortal understood tacitly and used a small technique, changing the energy in his hand into the shape of an immortal peach. "Don't worry, fourth prince. Leave the rest to us." Prince Qian nodded in satisfaction. The 20 yen immortals behind him split into 2 groups. One group followed him while the other escorted the fake immortal peaches away. The immortal clouds were vast, but he did not stop. He was about to leave with the 12 yen immortals. At this moment, a terrifying sense of danger suddenly surged from behind him. "Fourth brother, where are you going in such a hurry?" That slightly thin figure with a pair of dark eyes slowly walked out of the forest, alone. However, when this one figure appeared, it made all the yen immortals feel like they were facing a great enemy. Prince Qian's pupils constricted as if he had seen the last thing he wanted to face. In this fight for the peach, other than Prince Zhou, there were 2 other people that he was most afraid of. One of them was Prince Yu, and the other was the figure in front of them, his 5th brother, Prince Mo. There was no other reason. It was rumored that the 2 of them had already comprehended their own immortal styles. Once one comprehended the immortal style, even if it was just a trace, it meant that one had taken the step forward. When the opportunity came, one could completely advance to the next cultivation realm. They had thought that they would only find out after at least 2 or 3 days, but they did not expect that the most troublesome guy would come after them in less than half a day. Prince Qian smiled stiffly. "Oh, so it's you, 5th brother. Why? Did you detect the aura of the immortal peach? Where is it? Prince Mo, who was all alone, obviously did not want to say anything. He pointed at him and said in a low voice, "Fourth brother, hand over the immortal peach and I'll let you leave. It's better than being eliminated on the spot." A look of disgust flashed across Prince Qian's eyes. "Do you know how many Yen immortals are blocking your way? I advise you to get as far away as you can, so that I won't have to do anything later. It seems like there's no room for discussion." Prince Mo spread his hands and sneered. "Do it!" Following Prince Qian's furious shout, all the Yen immortals moved. Their vast Yen power turned into a dense net and descended on Prince Mo, a motley crowd. With Prince Mo as the center, dark blue crystals suddenly refracted in the air. Like ripples on the surface of a lake, they started to move rhythmically. At the same time, Prince Mo waved his hand. A long whip that was completely condensed from dark blue crystals, hundreds of feet long, fell from the ripples. A faint sense of transcendence burst forth, shaking the heavens and earth. The long whip stopped, and an unimaginable potential energy spread out in ripples. Anyone who got close to it would have their divine body shattered in an instant. Then, with a flash of white light, they would leave the heavenly realm. While holding the crystal whip, Prince Mo's body seemed to be surging with a terrifying energy. Every time the long whip was swung, it could destroy a Yen immortal. Every one of them was a top existence in the heavenly domain, yet they could not even withstand a single strike from Prince Mo. In just a few dozen breaths, the 12 Yen immortals were all eliminated by Prince Mo's attack. Cold sweat trickled down from Prince Qian's sideburns. Everything had happened so quickly that it was too late for him to escape. Prince Mo's companion walked out of the darkness and blocked his way. "Fourth brother, hand over the immortal peach and I'll let you two go," Prince Mo said indifferently. The crystal whip in his hand was like a swimming dragon that coiled behind him. "Fourth prince, give it to him. As long as there's life, there's hope," Prince Qian's companion advised in a low voice. He gritted his teeth and remained silent. If he handed over the immortal peach, it would be equivalent to him being eliminated. In the later stages, the winner of the peach competition would be selected from Prince Jiu, Prince Yu, and Prince Mo. A moment later, Prince Qian made up his mind and gritted his teeth as he threw the immortal peach to Prince Mo. Looking at the immortal peach in his hand, which was glowing with treasure light and had overlapping rainbow shadows, Prince Mo smiled secretly and put it in his arms. "Partner, let's go." Prince Qian did not have the slightest intention of stopping. He stomped on the ground and suddenly rose up. However, in the next moment, the crystal whip that was coiled in the air shot out and struck Prince Qian and his companion. The two of them did not even have time to make a sound before they completely disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened. It was extremely quiet. At this moment, there were only two figures left on this broken mountain peak. The corners of Prince Mo's mouth curled up into a smile, and his figure disappeared. Everything returned to silence. Not far away from the broken mountain peak, a monster ape was curled up under a huge cliff. Its eyes were as big as wheels, and they were filled with anxiety. Jian Wushuang and the young emperor, who were lying on the monster ape and witnessing everything, looked grave. They were obviously shocked by Prince Mo's fierce attack. Within 10 breaths, he wiped out 12 Yen immortals by himself. What kind of existence could do it so easily? Even Jian Wushuang could only take a roundabout route when he was surrounded by dozens of Yen immortals. It was almost impossible for him to do it so easily. But that impossible scene actually happened. Jian Wushuang and the young emperor had only arrived a moment after Prince Mo had appeared, led by the monster ape. They had wanted to take advantage of the fact that both sides had suffered heavy losses to take the immortal peach, but they had not expected to see such a shocking scene. From this, he had a preliminary judgment of the non-existent Prince Mo. Isn't this guy a little too strong? Jian Wushuang looked at the young emperor with a grave expression. An indecipherable look flashed across the young emperor's eyes. It seems that they've also been breaking through their cultivation realms. Just as he was about to speak, a powerful force surged from the broken mountain peak. Then, the prince brought over 20 yen immortals to this place. Sensing the fluctuation of yen power in the air around him that had yet to stabilize, the space between Prince Zhou's brows furrowed deeply. It was clear that a battle had taken place here not long ago, but he was still a step too late. The immortal peach is in Zhao province. He shouldn't have gone far. Go and find it, Prince Zhou said in a deep voice. The group of yen immortals behind him accepted the order and scattered across the entire Zhao province. Jian Wushuang and the young emperor rode on the monster ape's head and hid under the cliff. They planned to continue moving after Prince Zhou had left. In the next moment, the monster ape, which had been holding its breath, suddenly snorted. The tremendous force caught the two people riding on top off guard, directly sending them flying. Then they landed right behind Prince Zhou. Prince Zhou, who was lost in his thoughts, was suddenly startled. He turned around and saw the two people who had appeared out of nowhere. He was at a loss and on guard. "It's you, Prince Yen?" The two of them were equally confused. They did not expect to meet in such a way. The young emperor calmed down quickly and looked at Prince Zhou with a calm expression. "So what if it's me?" As if he had thought of something, Prince Zhou began to examine the two of them. "Is the immortal peach in your hands? So what if it is? Do you have the qualifications to take it away?" The young emperor's eyes were filled with disdain. Prince Zhou sneered. "I still have my reservations in the heavenly court. But here in the heavenly realm, let's settle our old and new scores together. Do you think you can?" The young emperor's eyes were filled with faint contempt and disdain from the beginning to the end. As if he felt humiliated, Prince Zhou growled in a low voice. A strong force surged and stirred the forest. At the same time, the white-robed yen immortal on his back naturally matched Jian Wushuang. The four figures were about to engage in a great battle. The monster ape was lying on the cliff, waiting for an opportunity to attack. In the blink of an eye, Prince Zhou's aura had risen to its peak. His cold gaze seemed as if he was going to swallow the young emperor whole. Just as they were about to attack, a voice suddenly sounded. Big brother, second brother, you guys are here too." The young emperor and Prince Zhou looked at the voice at the same time. He saw a thin, young, and handsome young man in a white robe flying over. He had no sense of retreat at all. "What are you doing here?" Prince Zhou was on guard as he secretly increased Yen Power's power. The handsome young man scratched his head and said, "Of course I'm here to find the immortal peach. Just now, my partner said that there was a strange phenomenon in Zhao province, so I ran over to try my luck." The prince said, "Aren't you afraid that you will be eliminated right now? Then I'll take my leave first. You guys continue." The handsome young man grinned and quickly urged his companion to leave. With the sudden participation of this handsome young man, this inevitable battle came to a tacit end. They all had their concerns. Now that an immortal peach had appeared in Zhao province, the center of the heavenly realm, the other princes and yen immortals were also coming. If they fought until both sides were injured, they would be in a very passive position in the following fight. With a wave of his sleeve, Prince Zhou gave the young emperor a cold look, then turned and left. The entire Zhao province seemed to have quietened down. "There's no time to lose. We have to hurry and find Prince Mo." The young emperor turned around and said to Jian Wushuang. He nodded and looked around. When he realized that there were no hidden traps, he waved his hand and picked up the monster ape that was still lying on the edge of the cliff. "If you expose us again, be careful that we don't roast you on the fire," Jian Wushuang said in a bad mood after slapping the big guy's head. When the monster ape heard that, it quickly shook its huge head and looked at him as if it was trying to please him. The two of them had originally planned to release the monster ape on their way to Zhao province, but they had discovered that it was extremely sensitive to the aura of the immortal peach and great danger, so they naturally continued to bring this burden. They sat on the monster ape's back again and followed the path that Prince Mo had disappeared in. "Big brother, long time no see." As he was traveling through the forest, a voice suddenly rang in his ears. Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat and he subconsciously looked to his side. The handsome young man who had left earlier appeared out of nowhere and grinned at the young emperor. A slender soft sword was suddenly pulled out and pointed forward. It was an inch away from piercing his neck. The handsome young man hurriedly retreated to create a safe distance. Get as far away as you can. If you dare to take one more step forward, you'll die. The young emperor glanced at him coldly and said casually. He smiled awkwardly. Actually, big brother, I don't have any ill intentions toward you. I just want to tell you that it's best if you don't fight with second brother and the others for the immortal peaches. Their strength and realm are only a step away from the elders. I'm afraid you. The young emperor's eyes were as sharp as knives as he looked at him. Sigh one more word and I'll cut your tongue off. The handsome young man had no choice but to leave with his companion. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly turned back and said, Don't worry, big brother. No matter what, I'll definitely help you with all my might when we get the peach. After saying this, the handsome young man disappeared without a trace. The young emperor looked ahead calmly as if he had not heard anything. This little brother is not bad. Is he your brother too? Jian Wushuang turned his head and asked. The seventh son, Prince Lin. The young emperor did not seem to want to mention the identities of the princes. After revealing their identities, he fell silent. Jian Wushuang was not too interested in it. After a simple nod, he sat in meditation on the monster ape's back. More than a month had passed since the battle for the peach, and everyone knew who the immortal peach belonged to. The only important thing now was how to deal with these terrifying princes and obtain the immortal peach. Judging from Prince Mo's previous performance, even Jian Wushuang was not confident that he could defeat him. In addition, it would be far more difficult for Prince Jiu and the other princes to seize the immortal peach and keep them for 7 days than they had imagined. By accident, they had captured a monster ape that was extremely sensitive to the aura of immortal peaches. This saved them a lot of time. They could get close to their target by sitting on the monster ape's back. In the following journey, Jian Wushuang and the young emperor sent away another 20 yen immortals. With the warning from Emperor Jin Wuyang, the two of them restrained themselves and no longer focused on killing. They did not bother to block those who did not provoke them. At the same time, just as Prince Mo, who was hiding the immortal peach, was about to step out of Jiao province, a great danger descended. When he saw nearly 30 yen immortals surrounding him, a young man with a similar heroic appearance to Prince Jiu also arrived. This time it was Prince Mo's turn to narrow his eyes. Prince Yu. If Jian Wushuang was here, he would definitely realize that the young man called Prince Yu was the one who had been beaten up by the young emperor in the heavenly court. Fifth brother, how have you been? Prince Yu's mouth twitched and he said with a fake smile. Prince Mo did not reply. After taking a deep breath, he prepared to leave with his companion. Since fifth brother is in such a hurry to leave, then leave the immortal peach behind. Prince Yu stretched out his palm slowly. His expression changed slightly before he gritted his teeth and said, I'll give you the immortal peach, but you have to let me go. Naturally, I, your third brother, will do as I say. Then he threw a palm-sized package at Prince Yu. Prince Yu's eyes were filled with eagerness. He reached out and caught the package. Then he frowned. At the same time, Prince Mo suddenly burst out with unparalleled yen power and rushed toward the sky. Knowing that he had been tricked, Prince Yu crushed the bag of stones in his hand. Catch up with them. He had greatly underestimated the terrifying power of the 30 over yen immortals, but at the same time, he had overestimated himself. It was as if all the escape routes around him were cut off before he could even escape 100 miles. Countless majestic yen power connected with each other, and the power could shake the heavens. Even if he understood the foundation of the immortal style, it was of no use. Dark blue crystals started to appear in the air. At the same time, a long whip that was like a swimming dragon landed in Prince Mo's hand. He was still not prepared to compromise and was making his final struggle. Prince Mo, has your brain been kicked by a donkey? Don't forget what we've done. Now you're actually going to turn against me for an immortal peach. Prince Yu's eyes were dark as he growled in anger. Prince Mo remained unmoved. If I give you the immortal peach, I will definitely be eliminated. Do you think I will give it to you directly? If you want it, then come and take it yourself. A touch of disgust appeared in Prince Yu's eyes. He clenched his right hand in the void, and an extremely sharp long sword appeared. Facing Prince Yu, Prince Mo had no chance of winning at all. He had been able to defeat Prince Qian with the help of the immortal style he had comprehended. One could imagine what kind of blow Prince Yu, who had been immersed in the immortal style for a long time, would be to him. Even so, he did not intend to give up the immortal peach. The 300-meter-long whip, which looked like a dragon, attacked first. The blade of the whip, which could tear any realm, left a faint white mark in the heavenly realm and smashed at Prince Yu. For the first time, the ever-successful whip met with a tough obstacle. Facing the Sword Mountain, Prince Yu directly used the almost complete immortal movement to meet it. The surrounding space seemed to reflect a diamond-shaped seven-colored brilliance at this moment, directly devouring and resolving Prince Mo's swift and violent attack. At the same time, needle-like rays of light emerged from each diamond-shaped brilliance. There were hundreds of millions of them. The dense light came down with the Sword Mountain, easily breaking Prince Mo's long whip and extinguishing his aura. With a flash of light, he and his companion disappeared. They were out of the game. The immortal style contained a unique and domineering energy. When it wiped out Prince Mo easily, it also put a lot of force on Prince Yu. He panted slightly and reached out to grab the immortal peach that had fallen to the ground. He did not stop for a moment as he prepared to leave. At this moment, an abrupt yet familiar opening remark rang in Prince Yu's ears, which made his heart sink. "Third brother, how have you been?" Prince Zhou floated out from the dark. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes. Prince Yu looked at him. "You've been following us for a long time, haven't you? You've been hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity." "That's right, I did come here before you, but you were too impatient, so I might as well let you perform a little more. Now it's time for me to reap the rewards." Prince Zhou smiled and extended his palm just like he had done earlier. "Do it." How could Prince Yu sit still and wait for his death? He gave the order and the 30-odd yen immortals moved. They charged at the 10-odd yen immortals brought by Prince Zhou. The most intense battle since the start of the battle for the peach had begun. Prince Yu took the immortal peach and prepared to escape as soon as the situation became chaotic. However, what happened next made his mood drop to the bottom of the valley. "Prince Hua." Prince Yu gritted his teeth and said, "Are you going to get involved too?" The noble figure, who was called Prince Hua, raised his eyebrows. "Third brother, I don't want to get involved. As long as you hand over the immortal peach, I'll let you go. Is that okay?" Hearing this, Prince Yu sneered. "Prince Hua, even if the immortal peach falls into your hands, do you think you can take it for yourself? Do you think Prince Zhou will let you go?" Prince Hua shrugged his shoulders. "I don't care. The most important thing now is to take the immortal peach from your hand and eliminate you." As his voice fell, another 20 yen immortals appeared and joined the battle. A force that covered the sky came down. Prince Yu flicked his wrist, and the extremely sharp sword intent tore the encirclement apart. Prince Yu was not afraid of Prince Hua, who had surrounded him. He had already mastered an immortal style. Other than his second brother, Prince Zhou, who he could not see through, he could easily be the leader of the 7 disciples. What he was worried about was that once he entered the chaotic battle, he would lose all his advantages and might even miss the immortal peach. Therefore, a chaotic battle was the last thing Prince Yu wanted to see. It was full of uncertainties. Other than the young Emperor Prince Yen, who had never shown his face, and the 7th prince, the 3 princes here had already engaged in the most intense competition. After defeating a yen immortal with 1 palm strike, Prince Yu did not care about anything else and fled the battle. A brilliant aura burst forth from his body, forcibly squeezing a gap in the battle. Prince Yu laughed complacently as he watched Prince Zhou and Prince Hua being surrounded by dozens of yen immortals. Then, he stepped on the mountain rocks and flew away. "You want to leave?" Prince Zhou's eyes were cold. He stretched out his hand and clenched it in the air. Instantly, an unparalleled force distorted the air and blocked Prince Yu's way. Almost at the same time, Prince Hua jumped up. His companion blocked the attacks of more than 10 yen immortals and sent him away. Yen power turned into a cone and stabbed at Prince Yu's back. If such a desperate strike hit him, he would definitely be severely injured. However, at this critical moment, Prince Yu's figure dimmed for a moment. The arrow-like yen power passed through his back but did not hurt him at all. Prince Yu turned around and smiled secretly. Then, a pair of huge crystal wings grew from his back and he flew up into the sky. "Get lost!" Prince Ju bellowed in rage. He slammed his palms on the ground and a crimson scroll swept across the peak of the mountain. All the yen immortals felt their vision go dark, and those at the center of the red scroll were eliminated. The peak of the mountain was now empty. Prince Jo stood in the middle of the scroll, which was densely covered with complicated patterns. The yen power around him had also turned into a crystal-like dark red color. The remaining Prince Hua and more than 10 yen immortals all looked at Prince Jo with unsightly expressions. Watching helplessly as Prince Yu ran away with the immortal peach, Prince Jo shifted all the hatred in his heart to Prince Hua. Seeing the undisguised killing intent in Prince Jo's eyes, Prince Hua slowly stepped back. "No, second brother, you'd better think it through. Without me, you—" Before he could finish his sentence, Prince Jo's yen power crushed his divine body without any hesitation and eliminated him. At this point, 3 princes had been eliminated. The only young emperor left was still at the edge of the battle. Now that Prince Lin had disappeared, the only one who could pose a threat to Prince Jo was Prince Yu. He had also comprehended an immortal style and Prince Yu was about to take the final step. He did not want to see Prince Yu become stronger than him. Snatching the immortal peach was the first step. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he would get rid of all the yen immortals from the other princes' camps. Zhaozhou had a vast terrain and was the peak of the heavenly realm. However, there was also a celestial mountain and river that were hundreds of millions of feet high. This peak was adjacent to the heavenly court. Before their eyes, a figure with dark blue wings on its back broke through the layers of flowing clouds formed by dense yen power and headed straight for the celestial mountain and river. It was the second day since he had the immortal peach. There were still 5 days left before the 7-day limit. As long as Prince Yu could keep ascending at such a high speed, he would most likely become the last one to seize the peach. At that time, he only needed to enter the celestial mountains and rivers to hide. Even if the young master wanted to find him, he would not have much time left. Thinking of this, he smiled complacently and sped up his body as he rose up into the mountains. In order to avoid being exposed, Prince Yu moved forward alone. He did not even bring his companions with him. What he did was to try his best to completely hide himself in the flowing clouds. Feeling the warm aura in his arms, Prince Yu could not resist the temptation and held the immortal peach in his hands again. It seemed to contain the shackles of fate, and the purest power of derivation was surging, which was extremely attractive. If Prince Yu did not know that there was a restrictive spell outside the immortal peach, he would have swallowed it on the spot. The more he looked at it, the more he drooled. Prince Yu's head was getting hot. He had been trapped in the yen immortal realm for too long, so long that he had almost forgotten the meaning of his existence. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye, but the variables that could happen were too great. If they missed this chance again, they would have to wait another Hua year. He could not wait any longer. He could sense that Prince Jo was quietly brewing something. If he was unable to improve, then what awaited him in the future would be a storm. With this thought in mind, Prince Yu's hesitant eyes gradually became firm. He raised his head and looked at the celestial mountain that was almost adjacent to the heavenly court and was hundreds of millions of feet high. An idea came to his mind. In the next moment, the immortal peach was back in his arms. Then, he gathered a vast amount of yen power in his arms. Like a whale sucking in water, the thick yen power in the entire heavenly realm rushed towards him. Every part of the space began to reflect a magnificent light. A power that surpassed the level of a yen immortal spread out, and at the same time strands of black hair turned white. This power should not have belonged to Prince Yu, but he had used it. The only possibility was that he had overused it. He was drawing from the future Wangmi realm. However, there was only madness in Prince Yu's eyes. Only a power that surpassed the yen immortal realm could shake the holy mountain. The next moment, Prince Yu moved. He was like an ancient god. Every step he took shook the heavens and the earth. His feet could easily tear apart mountains and rivers. Every breath he took was filled with surging yen power. Then, he stopped at the celestial mountain that was hundreds of millions of feet tall and was close to the heavenly court. He actually intended to uproot it. He used his body to destroy the divine peak with an infinite amount of power. The entire heavenly realm began to shake, and the chasms tore the earth apart. The heavenly river surged and rolled back, and countless immortal spirits wailed. A rumbling sound that could reach the core of the earth rumbled and trembled, and countless fine cracks spread from the roots of the mountain. This 100 million feet tall celestial mountain was actually about to collapse. Prince Yu, who had transformed into a giant form, had a crazy look in his eyes. He put his shoulder on the mountainside and tried his best to uproot the celestial mountain. What's this kid doing? Sitting on the emperor's throne in the heavenly court, Zhen Wuyang frowned. Could it be that he has strength but has nowhere to use it? When the other 100 elders saw this, they were also shocked and confused. They could not imagine why Prince Yu would do that. They could only wait and see. It was like a contest of strength. Prince Yu hugged the celestial mountain and exerted all his strength. The feedback from the collapse of the Earth's core indicated that the interior of the celestial mountain was beginning to crack. Just as Prince Yu was about to be unable to withstand the force, the entire celestial mountain, which was hundreds of millions of feet tall, suddenly broke from the root. Countless huge rocks fell, causing a series of disasters. The ground caved in and formed deep pits. The unimaginable weight and height would make even Yen immortals despair. But now it was broken by Prince Yu. Even Zhen Wuyang was slightly surprised. He actually had such a terrifying power that could cause heavy damage to the heavenly realm. At this moment, Prince Yu's black hair had become mottled. No one knew why he did this except for himself. The restriction on the immortal peach was planted by Emperor Zhen Wuyang, and none of the Yen immortals who participated in the battle could undo it. However, Prince Yu knew that this heavenly realm and the restrictive spell on the immortal peach had the same origin. Since they could not use their own power to destroy the restrictions on the immortal peaches, what if they used the Emperor's power to destroy the restrictions? This mountain was the foundation of the heavenly realm that Emperor Zhen Wuyang had built a long time ago. Prince Yu wanted to use the power of an emperor to destroy the restriction on the immortal peach. He held the mountain peak with one hand and took out the immortal peach with a trembling hand. Then, he threw it into the abyss-like mountain root. When the time came, he only needed to smash the mountain heavily and it would be crushed. At the same time, the cry of a monstrous ape resounded through the heavens and the earth. In the middle of the destroyed mountains and rivers, a 10,000 feet tall giant ape nimbly shuttled back and forth. With a wave of its extremely long arms, it reached out and grabbed the peach, which contained the shackles of a cultivation realm. It fell into the hands of the monstrous ape. Well done! At this moment, even the dark and calm young emperor could not help but smile. Prince Yu, who was hugging the celestial mountain and the divine peak, saw everything clearly. When he saw the monster ape intercept the immortal peach in the air, he was both shocked and angry. Bastard, how dare you! The monster ape raised its head and grinned in a human-like manner. Then, it twisted its huge body and disappeared into the broken mountains. Prince Yu was furious. He hugged the celestial mountain that was hundreds of millions of feet tall and threw it at the giant ape. This was a catastrophic moment. The entire heavenly realm was actually unable to bear it and began to collapse. Jian Wushuang, who was sitting on the back of the giant ape, raised his head to look at the shadow that was covering the sky. He suddenly drew the Tarot Divine sword from his waist and stabbed the monster ape's butt. The monster ape cried out in pain and scuttled away at an extremely fast speed. 1,000,000 miles in an instant. A dense fog that covered the sky rose, and the celestial mountain and peak that crashed into the ground could not withstand the huge force and broke from the mountainside. Prince Yu seemed to have gone completely crazy. He released supreme yen power from his palms and attacked Jian Wushuang. The heavenly realm's aura was already in chaos, and the shock waves from the impact of the mountains were so strong that even yen immortals could not stand still. Almost at the same time when Prince Yu was uprooting the celestial mountain, Prince Zhou had already set off. Many powerful figures also surrounded him from all directions. However, after such an intense attack had stopped for a moment, two figures dressed in black rangers slowly emerged from the mountains and rivers, stepping into the sky. Prince Yu panted heavily. Overdrawing from beyond his cultivation realm had caused irreversible damage to him, which could only be compensated by the immortal peach. "Give it to me, quickly return the immortal peach to me." Panting heavily, Prince Yu looked at the young emperor and said with hatred. Holding the immortal peach in his hand, the young emperor smiled gloomily. "You want it? Do you have the right to take it now? Quickly give it to me, you piece of trash." Prince Yu growled in anger. The constant loss of his cultivation realm scared him. Hearing the word trash, the young emperor's cold face suddenly darkened, and a slender soft sword quietly condensed in his hand. In the next moment, he threw the immortal peach to Jian Wushuang and charged forward with his sword alone. The vast sword intent surged and turned into an invincible sword, which was aimed at Prince Yu. Prince Yu, who was in a fit of rage, was not afraid at all. He put his palms together and blasted out yen power, which was as deep as hell. The two collided and destroyed the young emperor's sword intent. At the same time, Prince Yu was filled with killing intent. The sky behind him began to reflect the seven-colored light. An image form that could cause changes in the heavenly realm was formed, and then he faced the young emperor. His giant palm fell heavily. This was an immortal style. Immortal styles were profound signature moves that could only be controlled by those who had surpassed the yen immortal stage. In the current situation, once it was used, it meant that a situation of life and death would unfold. "I want you to die, you lowly piece of trash." Prince Yu's full-strength move seemed to be aimed at killing, as if he had released all the negative and evil thoughts that had been suppressed at the bottom of his heart. As long as the young emperor could not escape, the only way was to destroy the immortal source. However, the young emperor stood where he was, his eyes calm. "Prince Yen dodge." Jian Wushuang's voice was heard from afar. The young emperor slowly raised the corner of his mouth and raised a thin arm in the face of the great power. "I've never wanted to be the big brother of any of you, so I naturally won't carry out the corresponding duties. Today you want to kill me, so I'll naturally return the favor in the same way." His voice was so indifferent that it was almost indifferent. There was no emotion in his eyes from the beginning to the end. His long hair broke through the ribbon and danced in the air. An aura of death, nothingness, and black and white mixed together spread out, like a sun without any warmth, slowly rising. Prince Yu's crazy eyes became clear. He could not believe it. That aura was that of an immortal style. No, it's impossible. How can a guy who can't even comprehend and cultivate comprehend the immortal style? The giant palm that covered the sky collided with the black and white silent sun, triggering the most terrifying explosion. It had already surpassed the power of the yen immortal realm and instantly cleared everything in sight. The heavenly realm was collapsing, and the mountains and rivers were all destroyed. The extreme light caused every yen immortal to cover their eyes. Jian Wushuang was also shocked. He had a vague understanding of the young emperor's condition. The young emperor seemed to have some kind of hidden disease. Whether it was his realm or his divine body, he could only compete with ordinary yen immortals. But now, he was able to release such a terrifying move with his weak body. Jian Wushuang was shocked and confused. Could it be that the young emperor had been hiding the situation all along, and now he was showing his true strength? When the extreme light dissipated, the two figures were still standing in the sky. Prince Yu was in an extremely sorry state. From his heaving chest to his gray hair, it was obvious that he was an arrow at the end of its flight. Pulling up the celestial mountain earlier had already overdrawn his cultivation realm, and he had also released an immortal style crazily, which had almost exhausted his derived power to the extreme. On the other hand, the young emperor was not injured at all, except for a touch of red on his face. Looking at the young emperor walking toward him step by step, Prince Yu stepped back unconsciously. He could not understand how his useless brother could master an immortal style. "As I said, you were the one who had the intention to kill first, so I will return the favor in the same way." A strong killing intent shot out of the young emperor's eyes. He never knew how to restrain himself, not even when he was facing the emperor. The sharp glints formed by yen power condensed and blocked Prince Yu's retreat from all directions. Prince Yu's face turned pale. He saw the coldness, disdain, and determination in the young emperor's eyes. You can't kill me. I'll quit right now. However, as the thunderbolt struck, nearly 100 giant rays of light stabbed at him without any hesitation. It was impossible for Prince Yu to escape now. If this attack hit him, he would not even be eliminated, and his immortal source would be completely destroyed. Imperial Father, save me! With the last of his strength, Prince Yu's panicked voice resounded through the entire heavenly realm. Zhenwuyang, who was sitting in the heaven court, could not stay calm anymore. No one knew the young emperor better than him. He was a lawless guy who had no fear. If he had the intention to kill, there was almost no room for maneuver. Just as Zhenwuyang was about to descend with his true shadow, the heavenly realm shook. Each of the huge rays of light, which contained a terrifying killing intent, seemed to be blocked by a transparent barrier when they stabbed at Prince Yu. They could not move an inch further. At the same time, a faint red yen power surged up and crushed every single one of the huge rays. The young emperor's expression froze, and the soft sword in his hand began to tremble. It was Prince Zhou who came along with the faint red glow. He instantly stood in front of Prince Yu and looked at the young emperor with a complicated expression. Why you? After surviving the disaster, Prince Yu could not even speak properly. Looking straight ahead, Prince Zhou fixed his gaze on the young emperor. Prince Yen, I don't know how you comprehended the immortal style, but if you want to get the immortal peach with just one immortal style, I'd advise you not to waste your energy. As he spoke, more than 30 yen immortals rushed over from all directions and surrounded the young emperor and Jian Wushuang. Prince Yen hand over the immortal peach. If you back out now, I'll spare your life, Prince Zhou said indifferently. You want the immortal peach? Do you have the ability? The young emperor smiled disdainfully. For some reason, every time he faced the young emperor, the anger in Prince Zhou's heart would surge uncontrollably. Even a single word from him would make him furious. Kill them where they stand. Prince Zhou shouted angrily in a deep voice. The 30 over yen immortals immediately moved. The most powerful yen immortals joined forces and pressed down on the two of them. Jian Wushuang moved and released his yen power without any reservation. At the same time, he used the ancestral skill, the Transcendence Heavenly Gate. With the support of the yen power of the yen immortal realm, this ancestral skill had completely transformed. As the giant finger pressed down, the net formed by the 30 yen immortals could not press down and was stuck. The young emperor raised his soft sword, and his sword intent soared into the sky. The two combined their powers and actually broke through the attacks of the group of yen immortals. Prince Zhou, who was far away from the battle, revealed a trace of surprise in his eyes. He looked at Jian Wushuang with a vigilant gaze. The move that Jian Wushuang had released earlier had actually made Prince Zhou feel a little intimidated. How confident are you in winning if you fight him? He stretched out his finger and pointed at Jian Wushuang, who was fighting. The eyes of the white-robed man beside him focused, and then dimmed. Less than 30%. Is that so? The corners of Prince Zhou's lips curled up slowly. No wonder Prince Yen didn't even bring Chun Qing along. It turns out that there's an even more unfathomable fellow by his side. Young master, let me go. I'll definitely bring back the immortal peach. The white-robed Yen immortal requested. Prince Zhou shook his head and turned to look at Prince Yu. Feeling nervous, Prince Yu took half a step back. His eyes were alert and nervous. In his current condition, if Prince Zhou wanted to eliminate him, it would only take a wave of his hand. Help me do something. Consider it as you repaying me for saving your life, said Prince Zhou. He suddenly stuck his palm to his abdomen. All of a sudden, a stream of pale red yen power gushed into Prince Yu's limbs and bones, filling up his extremely dry meridians again. Prince Yu's condition recovered rapidly. Remember how Prince Yen treated you just now? Return the favor. I'll be waiting for your good news. Prince Zhou patted his shoulder and retreated slowly with his companions. How could Prince Yu not know what he was up to? But without Prince Zhou, he would have died long ago. How could he have escaped unscathed? Even without Prince Zhou's reminder, he would have taken his revenge and returned the terror of life and death. Prince Yu, who had returned to his peak state, felt the uncontrollable power in his body. He took a step forward. The vast and terrifying power swept forward like a huge wave. After sending a Yen Immortal flying with a single strike, Jian Wushuang fixed his eyes on the huge wave of Yen power that was coming at him. The next moment, the young emperor appeared in front of him and blocked the wave with his back. Boom, boom, boom. The indiscriminate attacks eliminated any Yen Immortals who were not careful. Jian Wushuang came to his senses and waved his hand to create a barrier to protect the two of them. The young emperor's face turned redder and redder after taking on most of the Yen power waves, and his black robe was torn. Without him, Jian Wushuang would have been the one who was severely injured. Hold on for a while. I'll take you away. Looking at the young emperor who was about to faint, Jian Wushuang's heart sank. He immediately supported the young emperor's body and prepared to escape. He had already prepared for the worst and reached into his clothes to touch the immortal peach. You can't give it to me. The young emperor looked up at Jian Wushuang and shook his head slowly but firmly. Let's see if we can get out of here, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, as he pointed the broken Tarot Divine sword forward. Prince Yu walked in the air with a hideous smile. His palms gestured, as if he was pushing away clouds, and a powerful force was released. Supporting the young emperor with his left arm and raising the Tarot Divine sword with his right hand, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and used the extinctive sword strike. In such a situation, he was at the end of his rope and was struggling to survive. The most ordinary sword attack had released the most terrifying power. This was an extinctive sword strike that was a gamble. It could only release its peak power in desperate situations, and there was no upper limit. One sword could block 1,000,000 swords, breaking the surface with a single point. Prince Yu's all-out attack only lasted for a moment before it was shattered. Like a boiling lake, it dissipated. Ahem, if I had known that you could block such an attack, I wouldn't have done it, the young emperor said reluctantly with Jian Wushuang's help. His body was weak to begin with, and even if he had comprehended the immortal style, it could not change his physique at all. Jian Wushuang pouted his lips slightly. I can block it now, but I might not be able to block it earlier. The young emperor smirked and looked ahead. There's such a huge difference in strength. I'm afraid we're really going to lose this time. What if there's a change in the situation? Jian Wushuang said slowly. As if to confirm his words, in the next moment, nearly 20 magnificent rainbow shadows rose from the giant river under him, their vigorous momentum shaking the sky and earth. At the front of these rainbow shadows, a giant monster ape roared. Its thousands of feet long body left a shocking impression on all the Yen Immortals. If one were to look carefully, on the back of the giant ape, there was a slightly young and thin figure, who was looking at everything that was happening in the sky with excitement. More than 20 new Yen Immortals surrounded Prince Yu and the other Yen Immortals like dumplings. Prince Lin, at this moment the young emperor, Prince Yu, and Prince Zhou all shouted the same name. It was the 7th prince, who he had met twice before and was the only one who had a good impression of the young emperor, Prince Lin. Big brother, your mount is really cool. This is the first time I've used an immortal spirit as a mount. Sitting on the monster ape's back, the 7th prince looked at the young emperor and exclaimed. The young emperor frowned. He did not expect this prince to interfere at this time. Prince Yu also looked at him in surprise and suspicion. Then, he asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing here? Are you going to fight for the immortal peach too?" "Third brother, please don't misunderstand. I don't have much interest in that kind of thing." Prince Lin scratched his head and then raised his eyebrows and smiled. "I'm purely here to help eldest brother. You and second brother have gone too far." Prince Yu sneered and said, "Are you looking for death? Even if you join us, will you be able to change the result? It's hard to say if I'll change, but I have to try, right?" Prince Lin said and stretched lazily on the monster ape's back. "Since you're looking for death, I'll just finish you off. Prince Yu smiled and took the lead to attack. When Prince Lin saw this, he patted the monster ape's head and fled. Almost at the same time, a Yen immortal who was in the same camp as Prince Lin also moved out and started fighting. Jian Wushuang felt the pressure around him suddenly lighten, and he no longer had the sense of urgency to resist. Close to 50 Yen immortals were engaged in a chaotic battle, and the explosion of different Yen powers was extremely beautiful. Jian Wushuang looked at Prince Yu, who was attacking Prince Lin, and his eyes brightened. "Be careful," the young emperor reminded him in a low voice. He nodded and placed his palm on the hilt of the Tarot Divine Sword. His figure disappeared like a ghost. Just as he was about to force the prince back with his palm, he felt a strong sense of danger, which made him turn his head subconsciously. Tsk tisk. However, it was too late. The knife had cut half an inch into his flesh, almost cutting off his entire head. Prince Yu retreated quickly and released Yen power to protect himself. Looking at the mysterious young man dressed like a ranger in black, Prince Yu felt a bone-deep pain from the wound on his neck. With a shake of his wrist, the divine blood on the Tarot Divine Sword fell off. Jian Wushuang looked at him calmly. He waved his hand to heal the wound on his neck. The craziness in Prince Yu's eyes disappeared. He looked back at Jian Wushuang vigilantly. To be able to get close to him without him knowing and almost behead him with a sword strike, such a terrifying strength made Prince Yu shudder. Without any unnecessary pleasantries, Jian Wushuang directly lifted his sword and pressed down. The broken Tarot Divine Sword was full of great power. The sword cut down and easily broke Prince Yu's Yen power. He was greatly shocked, and at the same time he used all his strength to resist. Although the body of the sword was broken, the sword principle was still there. Each sword carried a powerful momentum, which actually forced Prince Yu to start panicking. Each sword move was as slow as water and wide open, making it difficult for Prince Yu to respond with the corresponding Yen power. Although there was only one sword strike each time, it split into thousands of sword intents, forcing him to suffer more and more. Jian Wushuang was like a blacksmith, while Prince Yu was like an iron embryo that was constantly being hammered. During this hammering process, each of his sword strikes was becoming more and more condensed. Prince Yu almost fainted. In such a confrontation, he was actually being used as a whetstone. He was so humiliated that he was ready to release his immortal move to kill Jian Wushuang like a bug. But soon, Prince Yu was horrified to find that he could not summon the immortal style at all in his current state. The powerful sword slashed down and directly plowed a shocking wound on Prince Yu's lute bone. Divine blood gushed out. This sword almost cut him into two from the middle. Prince Yu was terrified. He found that this grim reaper-like young man was much more terrifying than he had imagined. If the young emperor had brought him shock and confusion, then Jian Wushuang was the symbol of coldness and death. By the time he realized the terror of life and death, it was already too late. Without any unnecessary words, Jian Wushuang raised the broken divine sword in his hand high, as if it was a punishment and judgment, and then he struck down the last invincible sword. However, the next moment a sudden change occurred. A light red scroll quietly swept out, and at the same time, a light beam directly pierced through Jian Wushuang's back. The warm divine blood sprayed on Prince Yu's face. Jian Wushuang's face turned pale. In the end, he did not manage to slash down. The Tarot Divine Sword slipped from his hand and fell into the abyss. He also lost his strength and fell from the clouds like a fallen leaf. Jian Wushuang. What? The young emperor cried out in shock and moved to pull him back almost at the same time. However, a faint red barrier soon appeared and blocked him. Prince Zhou walked out of the painting and looked at him with a faint smile. "I'm really sorry. My mistake has caused such an outcome. I'm afraid he can't even be eliminated." The young emperor's eyes turned from cold to furious. "Prince Zhou, you will die in my hands." "Oh, really? However, to prevent this from happening, I will make you, the big brother, disappear completely before that." Prince Zhou spoke in a tone that only the two of them could hear. A sun without any warmth lay across the sky. The black and white mixed colors revealed a deathly silence and nothingness. This was the young emperor's immortal style, a mysterious immortal style that came from an unknown origin. Prince Zhou's eyes were also burning with passion. He, who was the most unpredictable and as deep as an abyss, had finally revealed his strength at this moment. An unknown and extremely suppressed aura, which seemed to be muddled and unclear, emerged like silk and mist. Although I can't kill you in the heavenly realm, it's not a bad choice to be able to add a heavy blow to your weak body. It hurts? Jian Wushuang, who had lost consciousness, gradually regained consciousness as he felt the stream flowing beside him. At this moment, half of his body was soaked in the stream, and most of his black clothes were torn. He barely managed to support his body and fell to the ground, panting slightly. His originally broken chest was rapidly healing. The lost yen power and life force were also quickly recovering. This was all thanks to Jian Wushuang's perfect life form characteristics. As he cut off the past and achieved the yen immortal stage, his perfect life form did not disappear. Instead, it became more and more powerful after entering the great yen domain.